Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto gives up on Sasuke bashing. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Yethri and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. The beginning. It was a peaceful, sunny day in Konoha as Team 7 waited for their new Jounin sensei to come and get them. Like all the other teams to graduate from the academy that year, the 3 genin of Team 7 had been assigned to each other as a team and a Jounin sensei to guide and teach them. However, while the other Jounin had come and taken their teams, theirs had not even shown up. "Oh man!" exclaimed Uzumaki Naruto, the loudmouth dead last of the academy graduates. "Where in the Hokage's name is sensei?" he asked impatiently. "Why so impatient, dope?" asked Uchiha Sasuke, the number 1 rookie of the year, a smirk adorning his face. "And wait to get yourself killed. Team?" screamed Naruto. "I just want him to hurry up so I can start training to become Hokage." Replied Sasuke. "And pigs will fly." Naruto was about to give Sasuke a piece of his fist when the remaining member of the 3-man cell spoke. "Naruto. Stop disturbing Sasuke-kun and go train or something. Kami-sama knows you need it." Haruno Sakura was the smartest genin in their batch, getting the highest marks in the written portions of the exam while scoring average in other departments. On the other hand, Sasuke had gotten the overall highest marks and was thus named the number 1 rookie of the year. Naruto stood stunned for a while at the girl's words before lowering his head and mumbling out a soft, depressed Sakura-chan. Though it hurt him to hear her say that out loud, he knew she was right. He had gotten the lowest results of all, and the only reason he had graduated to genin had been because of that incident. Naruto pulled himself together and walked over to the farthest seat from the other two, where he sat down and started recalling the events of the previous night. He ran through the fine details of the events, starting from his use of Warak no Jutsu in order to knock out the Hokage, to his theft of the Forbidden Scroll, his learning of the Kagebunshin no Jutsu, and finally to Mizuki's apprehension. He personally considered himself lucky to have taught himself the Kagebunshin no Jutsu in one night, as well as to have been able to produce so many flawless clones. He himself understood that it had been the mass numbers that had gained him victory over Mizuki and not his battle skills. He shuddered at the thought of what would have happened had he not been able to make so many clones. He hadn't learned much else that night, apart from the revelation of his tenant who resided inside the seal on his belly, and to make things worse, he had even lost the small scroll he had copied some of the other forbidden jutsu to. Naruto's eyes widened as the realization hit him. There was always a reason for things to be forbidden, and he recalled the Sandaime had been very forceful in asking him not to teach the Kagebunshin to anyone. That meant that if anyone else found the scroll and the jutsu leaked out, the Sandaime would know exactly who to blame for it. He needed to find that scroll as soon as possible. Now if only he could be at 2 places at once. The answer struck him like a thunderbolt from Kami himself. Of course. The Kagebunshin. But how would he perform the technique without it being seen by both Sakura and Sasuke? It took him only a minute of thinking before the blonde boy got frustrated. After all, he wasn't known for his logical skills. He walked over to the window hoping some fresh air would help. He leaned over the windowsill and looked over towards the forest where he had hidden the scroll. If only he could find a way to create the clones. Naruto sighed and stood up only to bang his head on the raised window and fall all the way to the ground. Both his teammates saw him fall and they shook their heads in disbelief. Meanwhile, somewhere in midair, a blonde genin smiled to himself as he covered himself in the smoke of his new jutsu. All had gone according to his plan. Moments later, the blonde boy returned to the classroom, scratching the back of his head and grinning sheepishly as he entered. The antics of the dead last caused the number 1 rookie of the year to roll his eyes. How in 1,000 years had that dope managed to graduate? However, Sakura noticed something about the dead last that Sasuke didn't. Despite the large cloud that had formed on Naruto's impact on the ground, there seemed to be not even one speck of dirt on his body except his feet, on which she would have expected even him to land on. Yet, Sakura decided to let it pass this one time. After all, what could a dope possess that could be even remotely interesting to her? Naruto calmly walked over to his seat in the far corner of the table and sat in anticipation of his new sensei, his mind drifting, half worried about whether he could find the scroll his clones were looking for. Another hour had passed and there had still been no sign of their sensei. Both Sasuke and Sakura had fallen asleep due to the pure boredom of the hours spent, Sasuke in his usual evil gaze pose and Sakura face towards her crush. Naruto had had it. This sensei thought he could treat them any way he wanted due to them being mere genin. But he was wrong and Naruto would make sure he found out the hard way. A grin crossed his face and he dragged a desk closer to the door. The soft sound of the desk gently dragging on the floor woke Sakura, who never had been a heavy sleeper. She opened her eyes just in time to see the orange-clad boy climbing onto the desk, something rectangular in hand. Sakura stifled a yawn as she sat up and stretched. "Naruto. What do you think you are doing?" she asked softly, half forgetting where she was and who she was talking to. The grinning face glanced back at her as the boy in question wedged a dusty eraser into the partially open door. "A little payback for keeping us waiting for so long." Sakura looked at him quizzically as he got off and placed the desk in its original position. "Do you think it will work? He is a jounin after all," she said, though her inner self screamed at her to join in on the prank. Naruto just shrugged. "Who knows? It's worth a try though," he said. Naruto felt a slight tingling in the back of his brain as a clone of his dispelled. Though he had already experienced a wave of chakra exhausted dispels, the dispelling was not something he had gotten used to. Yet, this last dispel had not been due to chakra exhaustion, but rather due to being bitten by a snake when the clone had accidentally stepped on it. It was an unusual experience for him to feel exactly what the clone felt as it died, the phantom pain of the fangs biting into his leg and injecting whatever poison it possessed. However, like the last wave of dispelling, this had also taught Naruto a lot about the jutsu and the possible reasons for it being forbidden. Unlike the normal clone jutsu he knew of, each shadow clone required a lot of chakra from the user to create, though he didn't know exactly how much. On top of that, the technique created solid bodies that could interact and speak however he wanted them to. These clones could also go far from their creator and still stay intact. The disadvantage was that it took one blow, even a non-fatal one, to dispel the technique. Interestingly, the technique also transferred all the experiences the clone had back to the user when the clone dispelled, and with the experience he had, he knew that absorbing this information could be dangerous in large amounts. However, the possibilities of usage for this technique would be endless. He would need to find out more from his sensei when he met him about this forbidden technique before he could put it to use though, because Uzumaki Naruto knew that nothing good came without a catch. Speak of the devil, he thought as the sound of footsteps reached his ears through the hallway. Here comes the lazy guy right now. The footsteps stopped at the door and their first glimpse of their sensei was his hand coming through the slightly ajar door. Both Naruto's and Sakura's eyes darted to the duster wedged, both of them silently wishing for their sensei to fall for the little trick. A face appeared from the other side as a silver-haired man poked his head through the door before opening it further. Everything moved in slow motion, the duster taking all the time in the world to fall straight on the jounin's head, the dust of the chalk blowing up in a small cloud at the moment of impact. Naruto immediately burst out into laughter, leaving an agape Sakura and a still sleeping Sasuke, who stirred at the amount of noise Naruto was making. Inner Sakura immediately jumped up with a shout of victory at the success of the small prank, while Sakura herself was wondering if this was the skill of a jounin. The masked face raised a quizzical eyebrow at the rolling ball of orange on the floor, and Sakura struggled to speak, afraid that their sensei would be angry at them for playing such a trick. GG Gomen sensei. It was all his idea. Sakura was cut off short by a waving hand. My first impression of you is that I do not like you. The words caused Sakura's head to hang, knowing that all chances at a good first impression had been blown by her mischievous teammate. However, I will still give you a chance at becoming ninja. If you are interested, meet me up on the roof in 5 minutes. Without a further word, he was gone, leaving the three genin to themselves. Sakura immediately turned around to wake Sasuke up, allowing Naruto to walk out of the room unnoticed. The only thing on his mind right now was retrieving the scroll one of his clones had found just before it dispelled. If it were possible for someone to see rage, the whole of Konoha would see it rolling of the academy's rooftops in waves. Needless to say, Sakura was very pissed. It had been bad enough that she had had to wake Sasuke up to come to the roof ending in him, giving her a cold stare as he stormed off, but Naruto had seemingly disappeared on his way up. The jounin seemed the least bothered with the fact that one of the three were missing, busying himself with a book that was labeled Icha Icha. Sakura had seen one of those books at her place once when she had been cleaning her dad's closet, and her knowing exactly what that book contained did nothing to calm her rage. She also noted that Sasuke was trying to snatch a few winks in the meantime as well. The silver-haired jounin finally spoke, snatching a glance at the sun. Well, we've been here for 5 minutes already. If your teammate is not here in 5 more minutes, then the three of you are going back to the academy. This woke up the nodding off Sasuke, who immediately jumped up, furious. What? He exclaimed. You are going to send me, the number 1 rookie of Konoha, back to the academy just because the dead last of our batch chickened out? Yup, replied the jounin, nonchalantly, not even bothering to look up from his book. Each of you is part of a 3-man cell. And as such you are a team. And without your teammate, neither of you are going any further. The color literally drained from Sakura's face at the jounin's words. Another year at the academy was something serious. She would have no problems graduating again, yet the chances of being put on Sasuke's team again was slim to none. She had considered herself very lucky this time around, and she could not help but believe that her luck may not stand up to the test of time. Sasuke scoffed and crossed his arms across his chest in a proud manner. There is no way that is going to happen, he said, his confidence in his words apparent as he spoke. I am an invaluable asset to Konoha, and there is no way that the Hokage would let me go into the academy for another year. He will put me in another team and send another weakling to the academy. Maybe that fat Akimichi or that stuttering Hyuga girl. The statement the Uchiha made got a reaction from both other occupants of the roof. The Jounin's eye had left the page of the book he was reading and was rested on the boy in front of him while Sakura stared at him with shocked eyes. She had come to know Hinata from the academy class and had grown to like the gentle and caring Hyuga. Sakura had no doubt that once Hinata got over her lack of self-confidence that she would be the #1 kunoichi of their age. Never, even in her wildest dreams, had she thought Sasuke would think of Hinata like that. Her opinion of the cool and mysterious Uchiha pegged down one notch, finally as she saw one blemish upon his normally attractive facade. Sakura was about to raise the question of why Sasuke thought them weaklings when the exit to the roof flew open to reveal a panting Naruto. The look of relief flashed across her face as he slowly walked over to him. None of the three genin noticed the Jounin lift his headband across the left eye for a second. Okay. It's getting late already, so let's get this over with fast. I want you to introduce yourselves. Likes, dislikes and ambitions. Let's start with the latecomer. Naruto winced as the Jounin looked at him in eagerness. He had been found out, though he had no clue how, that he was a clone. The quick meeting line was an overly obvious hint. Naruto was about to oblige the Jounin when Sakura spoke out. Wait. You want us to introduce ourselves while we know nothing about you? She said. How about you give us an example? The Jounin sighed audibly, not too happy with having to go first, or having to go at all. Fine, fine. My name is Hada Kakashi. My likes are reading literature. Kakashi could have sworn that he had heard Sakura scoff at that statement. My dislikes are people who are too full of themselves and I have no ambition. Blondie, continue. Kakashi sighed audibly once more. In truth, he had not come with the intention of giving them any information apart from his name, but the appearance of Akajibunshin instead of one of his students had put an unexpected twist in his plans. He couldn't help but smile as Naruto stood up to speak. The boy had gotten the hint after all. Maybe he wasn't as stupid as they say. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I love ramen and I hate the 3 minutes it takes for the ramen to be prepared. My ambition is to become Hokage. As soon as he sat down, he received an appraising look from Kakashi as well as an odd one from Sakura. He sounds just like sensei when we were young, thought Kakashi with a smile. Sakura meanwhile was astonished at how calmly and quickly he had given the information and at the same time failed to confess his love for her. However, she decided to ask Naruto later as Kakashi turned to her. Okay. Pinky. You're next. Sakura rolled her eyes at the nickname Kakashi had called her, but let it go considering the strange occurrences of the day so far. My name is Haruno Sakura. My likes are glance toward Sasuke followed by a blush. My ambitions are another glance toward Sasuke followed by another blush, and my dislikes are those who are not the people they seem to be. Though her sentence was meant in general, Sakura was sure she saw a brief flash of hurt pass through Naruto at her mention of dislikes and decided to add it to her list of questions to ask Naruto later. After all, she couldn't afford to miss hearing Sasuke's introduction. There could be something in there that could help her claim the heart of the man she loved. Kakashi barely raised his eyes from his literature before he said one word. Uchiha. The Uchiha stood up and put his hands in his pockets before speaking, not to anyone in particular, but to everyone that would be listening. Uchiha Sasuke. I like power and people that possess power. I dislike weaklings and those that get in my way. My ambition is the revival of my clan and to kill a certain someone. Great, thought Kakashi, an avenger much like myself when I was younger. He saw that Naruto was not paying much attention to Sasuke anymore, but was concentrating on him. Sakura meanwhile was in dreamland, imagining Sasuke reviving his clan with her by his side. Kakashi's words, however, brought her out of her daydream. Okay. I have to go and catch up with a friend. So I want you to meet me at training ground number 4 at 8 o'clock in the morning. Sharp. And don't have breakfast or you'll throw up. He then poofed away in a cloud of smoke before either of the genin could say anything any further. Naruto was the first one to recover from the sudden shock of abandonment, scratching his head before saying. Well, it seems we are done here. So I'll be going. Ja. Sakura could barely manage a nod before the orange ball of energy jumped from rooftop to rooftop, going in the general direction of the Konoha village square, her thoughts being along the lines of did he really not ask me out on a date? Sakura didn't really care though, now that it was only her and Sasuke on the rooftop of the academy. It was the perfect chance for her to get her first kiss, but somehow, for reasons that avoided her, she just didn't want it that day. Sighing out loud much like Kakashi had, Sakura just walked off towards the stairs with her hand on her head, as if she had developed a sudden headache. All she knew was that Ino would have a laugh when she finally heard the story. Things could not be peachier for Sasuke. The dope was gone and so was the fangirl. Both of them out of his way, though it was temporarily, and he hoped that they would stay that way throughout their time as a team. He had one final thing to whisper out to the world before he jumped off, much like Naruto. Don't get in my way. Or else. Heading to the forest had been easy for Naruto. Once he had gotten out of that classroom, things had been a piece of cake. However, finding the exact tree the last clone had dropped the scroll near was difficult in a forest of very similar trees and had taken a lot of time. Luckily, his plan of sending a clone made from the last dredges of his chakra to the meeting with his sensei had worked, and he knew everything that had happened in the meeting, as if he had been there himself. However, he still had no clue how Kakashi had discerned him from his clone so easily. And there was also the question of where he had disappeared to as soon as the meeting had been finished. The answer to his question was standing in front of him with the scroll in his hand. "Ah, Naruto-kun. How nice to see you in person." Naruto didn't know whether the happiness in the Jounin's voice was faked or not, but he knew that what he had been looking for now rested in the very Jounin's hands. "What are you doing inside a forest? Looking for something?" asked Kakashi as he hefted the scroll, tossing it a few times into the air. Naruto scratched his head. It was apparent that he had been found out once again. This Jounin is something else, thought Naruto, realizing that Kakashi had tracked his chakra signature from all the way inside the village to this very spot. "I know what this scroll is, Naruto-kun," said Kakashi, looking down at the blonde boy, his tone serious, yet surprisingly gentle. "I hope you do what's right with this." Finished the Jounin as he handed the scroll back to Naruto. The blonde looked at Kakashi for a second, not sure if he was joking. The Jounin was handing him the scroll, fully knowing what it contained and was still trusting him. Kakashi spoke as soon as Naruto had taken the scroll, the blonde still obviously confused as to why he had gotten the scroll back. "Since you are here and who I met was a Kagebunshin, I am assuming that you already know of the information gathering ability of the technique." The boy nodded, allowing Kakashi to continue. "What is interesting is that everything the Kagebunshin learns is also learned by the user once the clone is dispelled. However, large amounts of information can overload one's brain and put them in a state of coma or outright kill them." Naruto looked at the Jounin, not sure where the silver-haired man was taking this lecture. "My point is, you have a lot to catch up on, knowledge-wise and training-wise. Maybe it is best to use the Kagebunshin to catch up." The light bulb lit up as if it had gotten that surge of electricity that it had needed really bad. It made sense really, now that he thought about it. It would save him time than relearning everything on his own. But remember, it only applies to your knowledge and familiarity with jutsu. Your physical abilities will not be transferred. So you will have to work on them by yourself. So that was the catch of this particular jutsu. Mentally shrugging to himself, Naruto decided that what he got in return for the catch was better than most and that he would still make the best use of it. Seeing the thoughts flit through Naruto's mind, Kakashi smiled before adding in his own sensei's touch to the whole meeting. "I suggest you start with chakra training. You do need to learn not to waste so much chakra creating a clone." Naruto's eyes widened. So that's how Kakashi had figured out that it was a clone. The release of chakra combined with the small amount left in the clone would be abnormal for someone who had created hundreds a few nights ago. Kakashi smiled at the boy. "Remember our meeting tomorrow and don't tire yourself out," he said before disappearing in a cloud of smoke after giving him the trademark Kakashi goodbye wave. Naruto stood still for a moment before starting off towards the Hokage Tower. He needed to give the old man the scroll, and besides, he had no idea where else to get help on chakra control. On the other side of town, Sakura was having one of her worst days. The first thing she had done once the meeting had ended had been to visit her childhood best friend to tell her about the events of the day. It was Ino's reaction that Sakura had not liked. Ino had been flabbergasted. She had not known what to think when Sakura had told her the story. The look that Sakura had given her when she had told her the story meant that it was something more than an odd occurrence for her friend, and being a fellow Uchiha fangirl, Ino had decided to try and lighten up the mood. Maybe you should give up on Sasuke-kun, Sakura. After all, that was probably your only chance to get ahead of me." The joke had not really been a joke for Sakura, and the rest of the time between them had been spent in awkward silence before Sakura had gone home. All of this, starting from the time they waited for their sensei, had basically ruined her day, and Sakura had gone to bed without having dinner. The thoughts had kept running right inside her head and had made her not want to do anything. Even now, they were preventing her from falling asleep and she needed her beauty sleep if she wanted to remain beautiful for Sasuke. There was a slight knock on her door and Sakura glanced to see her mother poke her head through the door. "Are you okay, sweetheart? You haven't had your dinner tonight?" asked the pink-haired woman. "No, mom. I don't really feel like eating tonight," said Sakura as she turned away once again. "Are you on another diet again?" asked Haruno Sayaki, hoping to lighten the mood but decided to probe again once she got no response from her daughter. "Want to talk about it, darling? Maybe it will help." Sakura thought about it for a second. She had gone to Ino hoping for some advice on it and had gotten none, even though Ino was considered an expert at giving advice to girls her age. Might as well try this, she thought. It couldn't become any worse. Sakura told her mother everything that had happened, going into detail and voicing her questions where she was confused and needed answers. There was a momentary silence after Sakura had finished speaking before her mother spoke. "Naruto is the boy in orange, right?" Sakura nodded and saw her mother's eyes fall in sadness. "From what I know of him, he has suffered a very hard past, Sakura-chan. That reason that he is so loud and obnoxious is to cover his suffering up. It is the only way that he can gain some attention. I feel that the boy you saw today is a glimpse of who Naruto truly is beneath the act." The tears glistening in Sayaki's eyes made Sakura wonder what would cause her mother to cry. Surely his past is not harder than Sasuke-kun's. Naruto never had to see his family die. Sayaki looked at Sakura. True. Naruto never had to see them die. There was a slight pause before Sayaki continued. Both of them have very different past, Sakura. Sayaki only shortened her daughter's name when she was sad. That was the only time she shortened anyone's name. One who has had love, has lost it, and does not want it again, and another who has never had love and wants it, but I do not think he will ever get the love that he deserves. Sakura frowned at the statement her mother had made. Don't worry, mom. I will make sure Sasuke-kun gets the love that he deserves. She said, smiling. Sayaki sighed inwardly and stood up, giving Sakura a warm smile. I'm sure you will get whatever you set your mind to, sweetheart. But at all times, keep an open mind and an open heart. Then you will understand what I am talking about. For now, go to sleep. You have to meet your team tomorrow, and you will need to get as strong as you can for when he will need you. Sayaki bent over and gave her a kiss before walking out the room, the tears finally falling from her eyes. There was a boy, a very needy boy, in front of her that needed love, and again there was nothing she could do. If only you knew his burden, Sakura-chan, and the sacrifice he has made for the whole village. Then you would love him too. Chapter 2. Survival Training. Sakura's alarm brought her out of her restless sleep at exactly 6 a.m. She silently cursed herself for setting it so early, but it was the beginning of her ninja career, and she wanted to look her best for it. She lazily got up and went to the bathroom. She spent half an hour in the shower and another full hour doing her hair before she went downstairs to say bye to her mom. However, it was Sayaki who saw Sakura first. "Hey. I made breakfast for you," said Sayaki as she showed a plate full of scrambled eggs and toast to her daughter. "Mom, Kakashi-sensei said not to have breakfast before our meeting," said Sakura as she looked at the plate in front of her. Though Kakashi had told them not to have breakfast, the sight of her favorite made her want to have some. "Oh," said Sayaki, her voice filled with fake sadness at her daughter's rejection of her cooking. "Not even a little? I'm sure your sensei will not mind." Sakura shrugged. "Guess it wouldn't hurt to have just a little of that," she though as she sat down at the table. A couple of toasts later, Sakura decided she had had enough and that she should leave to the training ground before she became late. To be honest, Sakura had not known where training ground 4 would be until she had seen a signpost that had pointed her in that direction. And when she arrived, she was surprised to see Sasuke already there leaning against a tree, his arms folded across his chest as usual. He spoke once she got a little closer. "You're late." Sakura faltered a little as she approached her crush. She had never expected such a cold statement to come from him. Besides, she was the second to arrive, Kakashi and Naruto hadn't even shown up yet. There was no way the meeting was commencing without either of them. All she could do was mumble a swift sorry as she sat near a tree on the opposite side of the field. All she had wanted to do was to strike up a decent conversation with him, and he had shot that plan to pieces seemingly effortlessly. However, it also gave her time to think about what her mother had said the previous night. Sakura knew of the Uchiha massacre a few years back. The whole village knew of it. She knew that every single member of his clan had been killed by Sasuke's elder brother Itachi. Everyone except Sasuke himself. He had had a family. He had had love. And that was why he would want it, right? Yet, her own justification did not sit well with her. He had half of the total number of single girls in Konoha running after him. He could choose any of them, and they would willingly give him everything he needed or wanted. Half of the village's adults felt sorry for him and would also do almost anything to help him. He could have all that love if he had wanted it. If, Sakura realized. But he didn't want it. Why? What could he be so focused on that he would ignore the people begging to love him? He had said that one of his goals was to kill a certain man. Who? Itachi. If it was indeed Itachi, Sasuke would need to be really strong. Was that why he needed power? Was he so focused on gaining that power to avenge his family that he didn't want anything else than that power? There were so many questions she wanted to ask, so many answers that she needed in order to figure out the riddle that her mother had implanted in her mind last night. It was during this train of though that the orange figure of Naruto caught her eye as he ran into the field. Naruto looked as if he had had a panic attack, looking everywhere fervently. "Is training over? Am I too late?" he asked, giving her a worried look. "No. Sensei hasn't arrived yet. We're waiting for him," replied the girl. She saw Naruto relax visibly and crumple next to a tree a decent distance away from her. He seemed exhausted to her, like he had not had a proper night of sleep. "Are you okay? You look exhausted," said Sakura to the blonde boy, causing Naruto to look up. He looked at her curiously for a second and spoke when Sakura raised an eyebrow. "No yelling at me for being late. No pounding on my head today?" he asked, and she shook her head. "No, not today. Don't really feel like it." Naruto just shrugged. "I was up late training last night and I passed out. Woke up a few minutes ago and ran here," he said as he leant back into the tree, massaging his sore legs and arms. "Naruto!" exclaimed Sakura as she sat upright, the realization of what had happened causing the concern she felt skyrocket. "That's chakra exhaustion. It's dangerous, you should go see a doctor." "I'm fine, Sakura-chan," he said. "No, it's not okay. You might have damaged your chakra coils. You have to go see one, Naruto," she yelled. "Adobe stays," said a deeper voice as Sakura turned to see Sasuke looking at them. "I don't want to get sent back to the academy because of him being absent." That was the second time during the same hour that she had heard such a cold statement from Sasuke. She didn't understand why Sasuke didn't want to send Naruto to the hospital. Naruto could be in a life-threatening situation or even career-threatening if he didn't get it treated, and Sasuke was forcing him to stay. For what? Sasuke's own career. She was about to speak up when Naruto spoke. "The team is right, Sakura-chan. If it were only my career at risk I would have gone. But it's also both of yours and I will stay so that you can have a chance. If it will make you happy I won't use any chakra till I go to the hospital." Sakura found herself seeing him in a new light. No longer the loud and abrasive boy he was, but the person who would risk his life for his teammates. He was taking a risk for the both of them, for their careers with no such concern for himself. If this was who Naruto was truly behind his facade, she decided that she could grow to like him with time. "Fine." She growled, not happy with the compromise, but seeing no other choice. "No chakra at all. And I'm coming with you to the hospital." Naruto's sweat dropped. He had been asking her to go on dates for so long, and all it took was for him to go to the hospital due to chakra exhaustion for her to come along. He wished he had thought of this sooner. "It's okay, Sakura-chan. I can go by myself." In truth, he had been hoping not to go to the hospital. It wasn't his favorite place in Konoha for the way the majority of the doctors and nurses treated him, but he did need to see one. But the last thing wanted was for Sakura to come along. He didn't want her to see how they treated him. She wouldn't understand. "No," she replied, her voice forceful and determined. "I'm coming. And if the two of you are not happy with it, then you two can train alone." Sakura had literally trapped Naruto. There was no point in him staying if it meant she wouldn't join and he would still have to go to the hospital. "Okay, Sakura-chan. You can come with me," he said, finally giving in, his eyes fixed on the angry eyes of the Uchiha who had fixed his on her. Sakura gave him a thin triumphant smile which he tried to return to the best of his ability. It was at that specific moment that Kakashi decided to appear in his trademark puff of smoke. "Sorry. I just think he has a lot of trademarks, bud. You're all here," he said, eyeing each and every one of them. "Since today is our first day as a team. We are not going to be doing any missions or training." He paused when he saw the confused look Sakura was giving him. Naruto seemed like he would nod off again any second, and Sasuke wore the same expression he always wore. "Today, we are going to do your final test before becoming a genin team." This last sentence got the reaction Kakashi had wanted from all three of his students. Sakura and Naruto jumped to their feet with screams of "what?" while Sasuke glared at him. Kakashi dropped to the ground from his position on the tree and walked over to them. "Yeah. Did Iruka not tell you about the final test? The test with a success rate of 66%. 66%. Thought Sakura. "No. Iruka-sensei didn't tell us of such a test." Kakashi scratched his chin. "I'm too bad for you. The ninja world is a tough place. A world of the survival of the fittest. And as such, we have a final test for all academy graduates to take in order to weed out the weak and admit the strong." Kakashi proceeded to take out two small bells from his pocket. "Your test comprises of taking one of these bells for me. The one who has a bell at the end of the time allocated will be a genin from here on. The ones who don't get a bell will be sent back to the academy, or if you chose so, you can quit as a ninja." "But Kakashi-sensei, there are only two bells," pointed out Naruto. "Yup, you are right. It is to ensure that at least one of you three will get sent back to the academy." Kakashi took out a small timer and placed it on a rock in front of the three genin. "Timer is set to lunch. Those who have a bell at the end of the time will get lunch. Those who don't will not get lunch. Instead you will be tied to one of these posts and will have to watch me eat my lunch in front of you. You will be given a second opportunity at a bell after lunch. Now remember, I am a jounin and you genin have no chance of getting a bell from me without coming at me with intent to kill. You can begin when I say go." A moment of silence was shared between the four as Kakashi waited for the words to sink in. Lifting his hand up for a second, he looked at the three genin before he threw his hand down, his voice resounding in the air as he yelled the magic word. Go. Kakashi watched as all three of the genin disappeared into the trees. Kakashi smiled. It seemed that the information given to him about Naruto by his academy teachers were once again wrong. They had made it seem like he was the gung-ho type to charge into everything head first. Yet again, the blonde boy had surprised him. Maybe he was maturing up a bit. Sasuke jumped from a tree in front of him, heading straight towards Kakashi. A clone in a henge. Thought Kakashi. Maybe Naruto hasn't matured after all. It was when Sasuke started to form hand seals that Kakashi knew it was not Naruto. Heitan, Gakakyu no Jutsu. Came the call as Kakashi barely managed to jump back to avoid the fireball. What a guy, he thought, to be able to use the Gakakyu at such a level at such a young age. Sasuke gave Kakashi no time to think, immediately appearing to his side and aiming a sidekick to Kakashi's face. Kakashi blocked the kick with his arm and caught Sasuke's punch with his other hand. Sasuke immediately rotated his body and swung his other leg at Kakashi, again causing the Jounin to release Sasuke's hand to block the incoming leg. This gave Sasuke the necessary momentum to turn himself upside down and try to grab one of the bells hung on Kakashi's belt. The Jounin's eyes widened as he saw the Uchiha taking a swipe at his bells and jumped back, Sasuke's fingers barely touching the strings and making them jingle. Sasuke decided to give the Gakakyu another chance, and at such close range, he was sure he would get Kakashi. However, he was astonished to see that Kakashi had disappeared amidst the fire. He was sure that his fireball wasn't strong enough to incinerate a Jounin. So where could Kakashi have gone? Left? Right? Behind? Above? No. Below? Sasuke barely managed to look down as a hand broke out of the ground and grabbed his ankle. Sasuke felt himself being pulled under until his whole body was underground except for his head. Oden, Shinju's Anshu no Jutsu, said Kakashi as he stood behind Sasuke. Good but not good enough. I wonder where your teammates are. Another moment of silence passed as Kakashi looked at his surroundings curiously while Sasuke tried to burn a hole through Kakashi's forehead with his eyes. Ah well. Time to go look for them. Said the Jounin as he stood up and walked away, not even caring that Sasuke was not too far away from him. Sasuke watched Kakashi walk away, furious that the Jounin had left him buried. Meanwhile, Naruto had caught up with Sakura and the both of them had planned on how to get the bells from Kakashi. Sakura watched as Naruto jumped down into the clearing to wait for Kakashi by the tree they had started out from under. She decided that this would be the right time to recall what Naruto had said once the test had started. Sakura, this is the person that said that he would fail you both had I not shown up for our introductory meeting. There is no way he would send one of us to the academy. This is a teamwork test. The bells, the lunches. They are just to turn us against each other. Think about it. There is no way one of us can take on a Jounin and come out on top. It all made sense once he had said it. Why indeed create a three-man cell if they were going to fail one anyways? To make things easier, Kakashi had even said it at the meeting. The question was, how had she nor Sasuke not noticed it before the dead last of their class? Sakura's senses tingled as she felt Kakashi's chakra signature come closer. She saw him walk up to Naruto and speak. So, how about we cut the act, Naruto? We both know you are smarter than you look. Naruto shrugged, his hands in his pockets. Between the both of us, sure. But I consider it my trump card to use against the other genin. He said with a slight smile. Alright. Conceded Kakashi. But remember that this particular trump card will only work a total of once. Naruto nodded as he dashed at Kakashi, his arm cocked back for a lethal punch. Going full frontal, eh? I wonder what you have planned, Naruto, thought Kakashi as he met Naruto's wild charge head-on. The Jounin jumped up at the last second, causing Naruto to stumble at the sudden movement of his intended target. However, the blonde boy recovered quickly, ducking into a forward roll, using both his hands to propel him towards a mid-air Kakashi, lashing a few kicks out as he neared Kakashi. The mid-air Jounin turned slightly in the air, causing Naruto to barely miss landing a hit on him. Naruto had just landed when Kakashi appeared at his side, aiming a mid-height kick towards the blonde boy's head, hoping Naruto would jump back to avoid it and fall straight into the trap that Kakashi had set up. However, it surprised Kakashi when Naruto ducked under his leg and swung a powerful uppercut aimed at his groin. Left with no move to make, Kakashi used a Kawarimi no Jutsu to transport him to safety and causing Naruto's fist to hit a log. Naruto heard the sound of clapping and turned around to see Kakashi applauding hhim. I'm impressed, Naruto-kun. You almost had me there. Said Kakashi. Naruto shook his head. No. I wouldn't have managed to push you this far had you been going all out on me. Kakashi nodded. Want to try again? He asked, pushing his hand into his pocket as he walked closer. Naruto wobbled on his feet as he sat on the ground and waved his hand. No. I'm out. My vision's already fuzzy, I'm not sure I can even try to keep up with you anymore. Kakashi watched as the orange-clad boy leaned back against a tree and closed his eyes. Naruto had drastically improved overnight and Kakashi decided that this deserved him a little rest and one of the lunches that he had brought along with him. It was the least to say that Kakashi was happy with Naruto's effort. Kakashi was walking over to Naruto when a sudden shadow fell over him. He managed to turn in time to see Sasuke complete the final hand seal for the Gakakyu and take in a deep breath. Kakashi barely had time to Kawarimi away before the fireball consumed the entire area around where he was standing. Kakashi paled the moment he had reappeared behind Sasuke. In his momentary panic, he had forgotten about Naruto and it may have very well cost the boy his life. This had been the only team thus far to show such promise and it had been ruined already. Kakashi moved to knock out Sasuke and found that his hand had gone through the Uchiha. The scenery changed to show a battered and tired Naruto still leaning against the tree while the Uchiha had disappeared. A slight jingle of bells from behind him caused him to turn around. His first reaction upon seeing Sakura happily jingling 2 bells was to grab at his belt to see if they were really missing. "Genjutsu?" he whispered as it dawned on him. "Since when?" Sakura smiled. "Since you replaced yourself with a log to avoid Naruto's blow." It made sense. He had made sure to spread logs throughout the training ground, yet this particular one he had replaced with had seemed too close to the area the fighting had taken place in. "So I take this was your doing, Sakura-chan?" he said, obviously pleased. "Yup." Sakura replied, nodding happily. "Genjutsu is mine, but the plan was entirely his," she said pointing at the boy leaning against the tree. "Sasuke?" inquired Kakashi. Sakura looked downward rather dejectedly before speaking. He said something about the both of us getting in his way and slowing him down. He thought he would be better off working alone. Kakashi thought about it. If indeed Sasuke had cooperated with his teammates, this exercise would have been over much sooner than now. So it appeared that there was still one of the 3 that had not learned the lesson. He would have to report Sasuke's behavior to the Sandaime. To pass the Uchiha after he had declined to play as a team would be showing favoritism and would further boost the Uchiha's ego. And that, Kakashi nor the hidden village of the leaves could not have. "Alright. With the retrieval of the 2 bells from me, this test is over. Meet me at the posts we were at earlier, I need to go dig up our pet clan heir," he said before he poofed away leaving Naruto and Sakura alone. "Well, we did it," said Naruto as Sakura walked over. "Yeah," she replied. "We wouldn't have if it had not been for you. Arigato, Naruto," she said and for the first time she saw a genuine smile from the boy. "It was nothing Sakura-chan," he said as he took her hand and groggily got to his feet. "I don't know," said Sakura as they walked off towards the clearing. "Somehow I don't feel sad Sasuke-kun didn't cooperate with us. I mean we did offer to help." Naruto could only nod at her statement. He was too exhausted to even think of making a witty comment about the Uchiha. Naruto stumbled as they neared the posts and fell into Sakura, causing both of them to topple to the ground. Naruto immediately tried to get up and off of the pink-haired girl and fell to his side again. Sakura knew that Naruto had used up the last of his energy walking this far and that he could no longer walk any further. She bent down and hoisted his arm around her shoulder before glancing at Naruto and smiling. "You know. Someone could claim that this was all an act you were faking so that you would get me to carry you to the posts." Naruto looked at Sakura with a face of faked mild panic. "Shhhh Sakura-chan. We don't want the whole world to know about my plan," he said. Sakura giggled at his antics and wondered how he managed to make light of every small situation that she would have felt depressed about. She knew she probably would have laughed had his voice not been shaky from so much exhaustion. They had barely reached the posts before Naruto slipped again causing him to hit his head on the wooden post and fall unconscious. Sakura knew that Naruto had slipped deliberately, trying to relieve her of his load sooner than she would have liked to. The knockout, however, she believed had been part of his clumsiness with himself. Sakura pulled Naruto's head onto her lap and slowly untied his forehead protector. There was blood coming out of a possible cut on his forehead and she wanted to at least stem the blood flow. However, she had been astonished as the cut healed by itself and vanished, leaving only a blood stain to show that there was even a cut there. The rustling of leaves alerted her to the entrance of Kakashi and Sasuke to the area. "Is he dead?" asked Uchiha with a smirk as he walked over and sat next to another post. Sakura glared at Sasuke, something that she had never imagined her being able to do towards him. "No," she hissed, not wanting to say anything to the egotistical Uchiha. "Alright, that's enough," said Kakashi as he stepped in between the 2 genin. "Sasuke, against the post," said the jounin as he laid a hand on the Uchiha's shoulder. "Why me?" he yelled. "Why not one of them losers?" "Well Sasuke-kun, Sakura managed to get 1 bell from me with Naruto's help. So she gets to eat. Naruto, well, you see he's pretty much out of it, so I can't tie him up or deny him the food," said Kakashi as he tied Sasuke's arms around the post behind him. It was easy to see the humiliation and anger in Sasuke's face as it happened. Alright Sakura, you know the rules. No feeding Sasuke till I come back from the Hokage. We will see who gets the remaining bell when I come back. Sakura spoke as soon as Kakashi left. You do know this whole test was about teamwork, right? She said as she unpacked one of the bento boxes Kakashi had left her. If you had cooperated with us when we came to you, maybe you wouldn't be in that position. Sasuke snorted. Why would I want to team up with you two weaklings? All you managed to get is one bell between the both of you. And look how he ended up. Sakura felt the anger rise up within her. True, Naruto had been worn out by the fight, yet he had fought already exhausted of his chakra, and to pull it off, they had gotten both bells. But, she wasn't going to tell Sasuke that, for if she did, then Kakashi's cover of having one of them go back to academy would be blown. Sakura sat in silence and ate her bento, not wanting to even glance at the arrogant Uchiha that seemed to anger her as easily as Naruto had once upon a time. She was halfway through when she realized that this lunch was the second chance at passing this test. She stopped eating and looked at the bento box. She already had a bell and wouldn't need as much chakra as she would have earlier to help Naruto and Sasuke. Yet, Sasuke would need the energy and chakra for what Kakashi has in store for them after the break. Besides, she had had a slight breakfast before she came and the other two hadn't. Sakura glanced once more at Sasuke before taking a deep breath and held out the bento box towards him. Here. You can have the rest. She said. I don't need food. Said the Uchiha turning his head away. Stop being so hard-headed. You will need the energy for the next test. She said as she stood up and walked closer to feed him. Sasuke had had enough. They thought they could mock him for his failure. He would show them what a failure they were. As soon as Sakura was close enough, he lashed out with his foot and kicked the bento box away, spilling its remains. Sakura was irate. Why did you do that? That was good food. She yelled. I am an Uchiha. The last remaining member of one of the most powerful clans in Konoha. We do not eat the leftovers from a commoner. A commoner? So that's what Sasuke thought of her, was it? Fine. She yelled back. Then this commoner is no longer going to do anything for you. Before she stormed off towards the farthest post from Sasuke and to Naruto. There was a slight stirring from Naruto, and Sakura's attention turned from the Uchiha to the blonde boy. He opened his eyes to see Sakura looking at him with worry and Sasuke tied to a pole. Naruto managed to groan and sit up properly before he spoke. Is this a dream? He said and heard Sakura giggle for the second time in the day. No, it's not. She replied as she handed him the remaining bento box. He looked at her with a mischievous smile. I guess it's too much to ask if you would feed me. The pink-haired girl smiled. Sorry. You are on your own on this one. She said. Naruto laughed and she realized that his genuine laugh was much different than his faked one. It seemed more joyous than his previous ones. Okay. I'll eat by myself then. I did Akamasu. He said before digging into the rice with gusto. It wasn't until he had swallowed the first bit of rice that he noticed that Sakura's bento box had been spilt. Aren't you eating, Sakura-chan? He asked. I've already eaten, Naruto. I had half before the oh so mighty Uchiha kicked it away for offering it to him. She said with a slight growl. Well, since you already tried offering it to him, want to help me finish this? I don't think I'll be able to finish this myself. Even though they both knew it was a lie, Naruto felt immediately better as Sakura picked up the pair of fallen chopsticks and joined him. Though unknown to the two genin, there was a flash and the slight snigger of someone who had just attained priceless blackmail material. The presence of this extra person did not go unknown to Hada Kakashi and the Sandaime that were currently hidden inside a tree nearby, though they decided to ignore it. I understand what you are saying, Kakashi. If we keep Sasuke on the team, it further boosts his ego about him being the last Uchiha and being fawned over by the entire village. And not to mention the consequences it might have on his teammates and mission should he decide to go solo. I understand that you want to fail them. Said the Hokage. On the contrary, Hokage-sama. I feel the other two would do very well on a team, any team for that matter. They both have the maturity and sense to adapt to each other's styles and I feel they could be very influential if passed. The Sandaime chuckled. You know, this is very weird coming from a jounin who has never passed a single team before due to their failure to work as a team. He said, causing Kakashi to scratch the back of his head sheepishly. Then there is the problem of their third member. I am sure you are aware that there are no more graduates from the academy. The silver-haired jounin thought for just a minute before responding. I was more thinking of Konoha's first two-man cell. The Sandaime's eyes widened. Though the thought it very interesting, Kakashi-kun, there is still the matter of the risks that they will be facing in the outside world. Not to mention their promotions. The Chunin exam is a three-man cell-based exam. I understand, Hokage-sama. That means I simply will have to prepare them so well that they can take on all odds for the next Chunin exam. Which I believe is being held here. I'm sure you can do something to prevent them from eliminating teams with lesser numbers. Sarutobi sighed. It was obvious that Kakashi had him trapped. Fine. I'll allow it. But it better not come and stab me in the back, Kakashi," said the Sandaime, to which the Jounin nodded. "Alright. Send Sasuke to me when you are done. I'll go inform the council about your decision. Though I'm pretty sure that they will try to make a team for him." Kakashi nodded and shunshined. "I am not so sure if this is the correct way to use past tense on shunshin." Back to his team. Naruto and Sakura had just finished their meal when Kakashi suddenly appeared behind Sasuke and untied him from the post. The Uchiha smirked and rubbed his sore arms. "The Sandaime yell at you?" he asked, the confidence in his voice evident. Kakashi just closed his eyes and sighed. "No. There is no way you can walk back to the academy while tied to a rooted post, is there?" The statement, mixed with the resulting furious expression from the Uchiha, caused the other two onlooking genin to burst into laughter, causing Sasuke to be infuriated even further. "You can't do this to me. I am an Uchiha. One of the village's ninja elite. You need me." Kakashi nodded. "True, very true. You are from one of the village's elite clans." This caused Sasuke to smile. They did need his skills and Sharingan after all. "But doesn't mean we need you. Some of the villagers might consider you living royalty. But I do not want or need a soldier that does not take orders or someone who doesn't play as a team on my squad." "Team? What team? Once you give me the strength and the power I need, I'll be better than any stinking team," yelled the infuriated Uchiha. "If a team is nothing, then explain to me why two genin were able to take both the bells from me, a Jounin and a former Anbu captain." Kakashi let the statement hang as Sakura and Naruto hung their jaws in awe at Kakashi. This test was all about teamwork. Each part of it was designed to pit you against your teammate to see if any of you would sacrifice their own interests for the good of the team and their mission. A ninja that does not care about the mission is trash. But a ninja who does not care about the village or his team is lower than trash. Remember that. There was a momentary silence as Sasuke recovered from Kakashi's verbal offense. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth as he spoke. "The Shinobi Council will hear of this offense. And you will come and beg me to let you teach me," he said before he vanished from sight. Though arrogant, Kakashi could not deny that the kid was a genius. "The bento box was also a test, right?" asked Sakura, finally voicing the question. "Yes. It was. It was his second chance to make up for what he hadn't seen earlier. If you hadn't offered it to him, I would have had no right to fail him." Naruto thought that it made sense. Anyone could be blamed for being blind once. Yet the one to refuse it a second time knowing what it was would be refusing it for real. "So, what happens to us now?" he said, speaking his turn. "I thought all genin squads were three-man cells." "They are. But the Sandaime has given me permission to train Konoha's very first two-man cell," said the Jounin, smiling. "What about the missions, sensei?" asked Sakura. "We'll manage. Naruto's Kagebunshin should make up for the missing third person. And for the risks, well, I guess the both of you just have to get stronger faster than everyone else. Now if there are no more questions, you two may go." Sakura immediately shot up from her sitting position, her hand grabbing Naruto's shirt and proceeding to drag him on the ground. "Sakura-chan," he moaned. "No buts, Naruto. You are suffering from chakra exhaustion. You need to go see a doctor," said the girl as she continued to drag him towards Konoha. Finally it clicked with Kakashi. So that's why he didn't use a single clone or jutsu during the entire test. He was out of chakra. Impressive, Naruto-kun. I would like to see what you would be capable of doing with full chakra capacity. Chapter 3. Training. The sun had barely risen above the horizon when Naruto woke up from his sleep. He glanced at his watch and figured that it must have broken or something. It had never failed to sound off before. He sat up on his bed and rubbed his eyes. He had a lot planned for the day and he needed to get started now if he wanted to finish most of it in time for his training with Team 7. He had been to the Hokage straight after his awkward visit to the hospital along with Sakura for some tips on Taijutsu training and he wanted to get started on it as soon as possible. Naruto groaned as he remembered the hospital trip. Sakura had made him walk through the streets, intent on not letting him use any amount of chakra, and it had been obvious that she had seen the glares and the curses thrown at him. Worse, she had also seen both the doctors and nurses ignore him, claiming that they had much more urgent issues to look at than some minor case of chakra exhaustion. In the end, she had taken him to her mother. One of the only remaining medic nins in the whole of Konoha. However, the time after the hospital visit had allowed him to reflect on the survival exam and note that his Taijutsu was below par. Par being Sasuke's Taijutsu level. He knew he needed to improve on it, but he also knew that the academy style of Taijutsu did not suit him at all. The only option left for him was to create his own Taijutsu style. And that was why he had visited the Hokage later that night. And though he didn't get any on developing his own style, he did get some tips on how to improve his speed and strength. The old man, Kami bless his soul, had also given him a scroll that taught him two types of seals. A weight seal and a storage seal. The effects and how to use them had been written on the scroll along with the instructions. though it seemed that Naruto needed to improve his calligraphy before he could use either seal. And as such, practicing calligraphy was the first thing on his agenda for the day. Naruto decided he'd make 10 clones to help him. 4 to practice calligraphy along with him and the remaining 6 to work on his chakra control. What little of the tree walking exercise he had mastered had helped him with the clones he produced, and he could now feel the difference in chakra drainage. Thus he decided it would be best if he mastered every aspect of it before attempting anything else and set his clones about it. He also set the clock right in front of him so that he'd be able to see the time pass by. The last thing he wanted to be was late for team training. Sakura arrived at the bridge sharp at 12 p.m. and was surprised to see both Naruto and Kakashi already there. "Well, this is a surprise," she said as she walked up to them. Naruto nodded. "He was here earlier than I was. So I'm in doubt as to whether it's really him." This was Kakashi's cue to wave his hands in front of him. No, it's me. I just thought since you are now a two-man cell that you will need all the time you can get with me," said the Jounin, giving them his one-eyed smile. It was understood by both genin that they both needed to be stronger in order to make up for their missing teammate. Almost all shinobi teams were made up of either 3 members or more. That included the Chunin and Jounin teams from the other shinobi nations as well. And if Team 7 were to meet any of these teams they would be greatly outnumbered and there was where the extra training would come in. "So what's our plan for today?" asked Sakura and in turn got an amused smile from Kakashi. "Looks like the fangirl is ready to train without the object of her affection around anymore," said the silver-haired Jounin with a slight chuckle. Sakura scoffed. "Ex-fangirl," she stated. "The crush was pretty much, well, crushed when his attitude fell lower than mine," she said giving them a smile of her own at the pun. "Besides, I feel it is time for a little change in the way I live my life." Kakashi nodded. Okay, he said. "I was thinking it would be best if we set up a daily schedule for the both of you before we moved on to anything else like missions. It is pretty apparent that you two need training more than the time you two spend with me. How much time can both of you devote to training?" he asked, gesturing to Sakura. "I can devote my whole day. I would like to be home at night so I can spend some time with mom and also some time to myself," she said. "Naruto?" asked Kakashi once she had finished. "It's not like I have anyone waiting for me at my apartment or friends to hang out with," said the boy and Sakura felt an immediate pang of sadness at his statement. She knew how hard it was for her to spend nights without her mother whenever there was a crisis at the hospital. It was only due to Ino and her mother that Sakura had survived the nights. She couldn't even imagine what it was like to spend most of her time alone. It was one of the reasons she had tried so hard to care for Sasuke, to not let him feel that pain, and she realized now that no one had tried to lessen it even a little for Naruto. Said Kakashi as he pondered on the information they had given him. "Okay. How about this? How about you two join up sometime in the morning? You two can decide the time amongst yourselves. You can train yourselves on whatever you like. And then at sharp 12 o'clock I will join you for our missions. We can have lunch together and continue our set amount of daily missions until nightfall. If you complete them all with spare time, I will teach you both something of your own choice." The two genin mulled Kakashi's plan over for a minute. On one hand it meant that they both had to train with each other with no sort of guidance or help for half a day before he would join them with a scroll full of mission. Yet, it would also mean that if they did manage to complete the missions on time that they could get any sort of help or information from the Jounin. Sakura was the first to respond. "Okay. Fine with me." And Naruto just nodded. Kakashi smiled. "Alright. You two can decide the time to meet later. For now, we have some missions to do." But that Team 7 started the long and boring missions classified as the low D-ranked missions. Though the two managed to complete the missions a few minutes before sunset, the both of them were too exhausted and sore to do any training. After all, it had been their first day of doing missions. "Well, you two did great for rookie genin. And you even managed to finish before sunset. Now I am a man who does not like to go back on his word, and since you two do not look like you can train any further, I will give you both some advice." This perked up both of the panting genin's attentions. "Sakura, you have amazing chakra control, but your chakra capacity is below average for even a genin. Exhaust your chakra before you go to bed every night and you will see it grow gradually. Naruto, you have loads of chakra even for a chunin, yet your control is so bad that your skill with chakra is mere academy level. Do not get me wrong, it's improved since yesterday, but you still need to fine-tune it. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad to ask someone for help on an easier way to learn to control it." Kakashi vanished before either of the two could ask further more about his advice. "What is up with him?" groaned Sakura as she rolled her eyes at Kakashi's behavior. "Why did we have to get stuck with him?" Naruto shrugged. "Maybe he just wants us to know that we will not grow strong only on what he teaches us and that we need to improve ourselves. All I know is that no one else would have given us this chance to be a two-man cell." Sakura nodded and sighed. Alright. I guess you are right. Well. I'm exhausted so I'm going to go home and sleep. See you tomorrow Naruto. Said Sakura as she stumbled towards her home, her legs too heavy to lift on her own. It was only when Naruto reached his apartment that he realized that they hadn't set a time to meet the next day. He would wake up early tomorrow and go find her. He just had no strength to move tonight. Needless to say, the young Jinchuriki was asleep as soon as he hit the bed. The next morning began abruptly for Naruto to the sound of someone knocking on his front door. He glanced at his clock and silently cursed whoever that had woken him up at 4 in the morning before pulling his pants on and walking to the door. The dreary-eyed boy opened the door to find both Sakura and Sayaki standing at his doorstep. "Good morning Naruto-kun," greeted the elder Haruno cheerfully. "Did we wake you up?" she asked. Naruto recovered fast, grinning before he scratched the back of his head. "Well, yeah, kind of. But since you are here why don't you come in?" he asked, opening the door and gesturing them in. "It isn't much compared to what you two are used to at your house, but I tried to make it as homely as I could with my allowance." Sakura glanced up as she entered and saw the blonde boy slip a black t-shirt on. It was a bit weird to see him in any other color than orange, but Sakura couldn't help but think that he looked good in black. It made him seem more mature. "Naruto," she called, getting his attention. "How come you don't wear that to missions? It is less visible in the dark you know." "Well. To be honest, the jumpsuit was something given to me by one of the first people to accept me. Originally when I was a baby, so that he could differentiate me in the orphanage. I just stuck with the style ever since." He paused to look at Sakura before continuing. "Besides, you can't talk. You wear that bright red dress every day. Maybe you should change it too." Sayaki laughed at his comeback though Sakura went into deep thought. She had started wearing that dress sometime in her second year in the academy. A little after her crush on Sasuke started to develop. It was after that rumor that Sasuke liked girly girls more that she had worn it and started wearing her hair long. Maybe Naruto was right. Maybe it was time she changed it. "Shall we?" asked Naruto. "After all, Kakashi-sensei did say we would need all the training we could get." Sakura nodded and followed Naruto outside. "I was thinking of a few laps around Konoha. You know, to increase our stamina. Since we kind of do get exhausted very easily." He said and Sayaki nodded. "That's good thinking Naruto-kun. I know how early you two finished up yesterday and Sakura being someone obsessed with her femininity, albeit during her fangirl phase, hasn't quite developed the muscles a ninja requires," continued Sayaki. There was no way Sakura could argue with that. She had indeed neglected her training, thinking that it would only be a hindrance to her chances of having Sasuke. And it was only now she realized what a mistake that had been. She wouldn't dare to think how she would turn out if she hadn't stopped fawning after the Uchiha. Since neither Sakura nor Naruto were taking the initiative, Sayaki gave them a slight nudge. "So how about you two go run and I'll meet you on training ground for in say, half an hour." The two genin nodded before disappearing from view as fast as they could. Half an hour later, the two genin literally stumbled into the training grounds, both exhausted and aching to find Sayaki there already with a couple of packed bento boxes, waiting for them. She called out as soon as she saw them. "I brought you guys some breakfast," said Sayaki. "Why don't you have them while you rest?" The pair quickly ate their breakfast, intent on not wasting too much time that could be used to strengthen themselves, before moving on to chakra control exercises, Naruto using some clones to speed up his learning curve. It was Sakura's first time seeing the Kagebunshin used by the blonde boy as he preferred to do the missions just by himself. She didn't know why, but he had said something about improving himself physically and she had let it go. "My," said Sayaki as she stepped up to her daughter. "The Kagebunshin. It's been a while since I saw this particular A-rank jutsu." "A rank?" echoed Sakura. "Yes," replied Sayaki. "It is a clone jutsu that produces solid clones that are as strong as the user himself. They have the same abilities as the user, both physically and jutsu-wise. Guess Naruto isn't as weak as he looks." Sakura could not help but stare in awe at Naruto's skill in the Kagebunshin. She could only imagine the amount of chakra he needed to use to form one yet the 10 that he was currently using. After all, it was ninja basics that the more powerful a jutsu the larger amount of chakra or control it takes. "Oh Sakura-chan," urged Sayaki. "You may not have his chakra, but it does not make you any less of a ninja. I'm sure he will be the first to say that." Sakura nodded and ran off. True, she might not know the jutsu or have his huge chakra capacity, yet it did not mean she was any more incapable of doing the jutsus and the exercises he could. Plus it did help that she had more control over her small amount of chakra, which she decided really needed to grow. Naruto was halfway up the tree when the bark beneath his left foot crumbled and he fell off. He noticed that it was only then that Sakura had started even attempting the exercise. To his wonder and dismay, she managed to climb to the top of the tree on her first try, though she looked pretty drained from the effort. He made a mental note to ask her later. After an hour of tree climbing, Sakura stopped and called Naruto over. "What's wrong, Sakura-chan?" he asked as he jogged over to the breathless girl. "I'm out of chakra," she managed to say in between pants. Naruto nodded. He remembered Kakashi saying that she had smaller chakra reserves and that she should grow them. "Okay," said the boy. "How about you rest for a while and then we can have a Taijutsu spar to see where our weaknesses lie." "Sure," Sakura replied. "Oh no, Sakura-chan. How do you do the tree climbing exercise so easily?" said the blonde boy. It seemed to Sakura as if Naruto had trouble asking her. She knew it was not because he looked down on her as a ninja. Being the dead last for their entire time in the academy, he knew that most were better than him at something. He seemed almost as if he was afraid of her reaction. The trip to the hospital flashed back to her mind. The glares and curses she was sure were thrown in his direction. So intense, so full of hatred that she feared they might have attacked him had she not been with him. Inside the hospital had been no different. Those glares were still there, yet here, they also denied him the treatment. All with a simple "I have more urgent matters to attend to." It was as if they did not care what happened to him. Sakura-chan," came Naruto's voice bringing her back to the present. "I can go ask someone else if you have trouble explaining," he said. The sadness was evident in his voice. No, Naruto," she said quickly. "The trick of the exercise is to find out the exact amount of chakra necessary to stick to the tree and to keep that amount gathered at the sole of your foot rather than trying to gather the amount for each step." There was a loud thwack as Naruto slapped his head. No wonder he had found it so difficult to stick to the tree. He had always gathered the chakra and released it after his step had been taken instead of holding the chakra at his feet. "Thanks, Sakura-chan," he yelled in her ear as he ran off, dispelling his current batch of clones and forming another. 10 minutes later, Naruto had gotten the hang of the tree climbing and was now facing off solely against Sakura in a one-on-one Taijutsu-only spar. Slow and deliberate, both genin took time in trying to figure out the opponent's weakness and tried using it against them, both of them landing an equal amount of hits. Naruto's fully offensive Taijutsu had a lot of flaws in it, leaving him open to preemptive attacks and counter-attacks. Sakura's defensive Taijutsu had its own flaws as well, her lack of speed and strength to withstand Naruto's brute force, allowing him to land as many blows as her counters allowed her to. They continued sparring until about 11 in the morning when Sayaki decided it was best that they rest the next hour and ready themselves for the missions. Naruto, being as generous as he was, offered Sakura the chance to learn the weight and storage seals along with him, and the girl took the chance without any hesitation. It was during this practice of calligraphy that Sakura asked Naruto about the Kagebunshin. "Naruto?" she asked and he looked at her. "Where did you learn the Kagebunshin? I mean, it's an awesome technique, but it's not taught anywhere in the academy or Konoha." Naruto looked back at his paper as the events of that night flashed back through his brain. Would it be okay to tell Sakura about what had happened? About how he had graduated? Sakura noticed him furrow his eyebrows as he tried to decide on a path of action and figured that it was a sensitive topic for him. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, Naruto-kun." Naruto looked up at her and smiled. "Thanks, Sakura-chan. It's just hard for me to tell you about it." Sakura smiled. "Do you think I can learn it?" she asked. Naruto thought for a minute before she replied. "Of course you can. But I can't teach it to you. It has a lot of risks. For example, the chakra required may be more than you have for more than one clone. And the clones do die rather easily." Sakura nodded. It made sense, even a powerful jutsu had to have a weakness. "How come you don't use more than 10 clones at a time? You have enough chakra to create more?" she asked. "Well, yes, I can create more clones at a time. But each time they dispel, all their experiences and memories are transferred to me. And 10 lives at once make me a little groggy. I'm not sure I can take more than that without getting used to it more," he replied, not even bothering to look up from his writing. "Memories?" she asked. "Yeah. Everything they see, hear and feel are transferred to me. Which means I immediately know what they've seen, felt or heard, and if they died, the pain of their death as well. Also, it means that whatever jutsu they practice, I become more familiar with as well. That's why I use them for the exercises." "How come you don't use them in missions then?" she asked, now very curious. "Well, the theory only applies to Jinjutsu and Ninjutsu. Not to Jutsu. As only the memories are passed to me. So basically my muscles do not develop just because my clones use them. I'm not really sure about Kinjutsu. I will have to ask someone like Kakashi." "Yes," came a voice as both genin looked upwards to see Kakashi perched on the branch. "The technique can be applied to Kinjutsu as well, if you mean the experience in handling a katana. And yes, Sakura can learn the Kagebunshin, but she has to promise to use only 1 clone per day and for training only." Sakura's interest peaked at the mention of her learning the Kagebunshin. "Why only once a day and only for training?" asked Naruto. "Well, with her current reserves, it would drain her too much to be effective in battle. Yet in training, it would help her with her jutsus and chakra control, while the drain will increase the rate of the growth of her chakra reserves," replied Kakashi. "The one clone per day rule only applies until her reserves are large enough for her to be able to make two and still stay standing on her feet. You do know that the clones dispel if the user is out of chakra or unconscious, right?" Naruto nodded. He had experienced that the first night. His chakra exhaustion had dispelled the clones, the information overload finally knocking him out. "Well. If you two are done resting, shall we get on with our missions?" asked Kakashi as he jumped down to the ground. The two genin stood up and left after their sensei. The system of training continued for the next 2 weeks, both of them doing laps early in the morning, followed by chakra control exercises, which sometimes went along with sparring, and then doing the missions in the afternoon. Both genin of Team 7 had improved a lot compared to their starting positions, both of them managing to learn the weight and storage seals, as well as moving on to water walking to the limit where they could now spar on water. Their taijutsu skills had also improved as well as their marksmanship with the ninja tools such as shuriken and kunai. Naruto's chakra control had improved to the point that he wasted very little chakra while performing the Kagebunshin. Sakura meanwhile had increased her chakra capacity so that now she could form 2 Kagebunshin and still be effective in battle, though her control had slipped a little. Kakashi had been overjoyed with their progress and as promised had taught them what they had wanted to know. Surprisingly for him, the only thing they had asked him for was taijutsu lessons and tips. He had asked them why and they had responded that it was the only thing that they needed to improve as soon as possible and that it was the only thing that they could not learn from a scroll or a book in the ninja library. Kakashi had gone further as to ask why they hadn't asked for ninjutsu or genjutsu lessons. Sakura had been the one to respond to this particular question, stating that neither of them knew their chakra affinities, thus did not know what type of ninjutsu to ask for. The two genin had decided to take their nights off, Naruto spending his time with more seals that the Sandaime had given him on request and Sakura studying the human body. Sakura had always wanted to be a doctor and had decided that she would become a medic nin like her mother. And it would also mean that she would have a career to fall back on if she encountered a career-ending injury. Exactly 2 weeks after their training had started, both Naruto and Sakura stood near the bridge waiting for Kakashi. "He's late," said Sakura. "It's not like him to be late for our meetings." Indeed, Kakashi had stopped his habit of being late, at least to things where his two-man cell was concerned. "I bet it's the old man," he said as he finished drawing a seal on the palm of a black glove that he had bought from a store earlier that morning. Now that his control was better, he could manage a small genjutsu that disguised him and allowed him to buy things from shops and stores he wasn't allowed into earlier. "I don't really see anyone else being able to detain him for so long." True. Over the past 2 weeks, the two genin had gotten to know their sensei a bit more. Enough that Kakashi had told them about his past with Obito and Rin and the Yondaime, as well as his time as an Anbu captain, though he hadn't told them everything. They didn't expect him to either. "Alright. It's done," he exclaimed as he put the glove on. Sakura looked at his questioningly and Naruto held out his palm at her. "See that?" he said as she pointed to the palm of the glove and the seal he had painted there. "That's a special storage seal for kunai," he said grinning. "I have another special seal for shuriken on the palm of this hand. So now, I don't have to reach anywhere to get a weapon." It finally made sense why he was so fervent about being a better shuriken thrower with his left arm than his right. He was practicing so that he could always hit his target by surprise. "Naruto," said Sakura. "What if the kunai comes out with the pointed end towards you?" she asked. It wasn't really a problem with the shuriken as each side of the star was sharp enough, but the kunai was like a knife, a blade on one end and a handle on the other. Naruto stuck his hand closer to her face. "See the diagram of a kunai?" Sakura looked closely at the seal and noticed a diagram of a kunai in the middle, its point faced towards the left, away from the body when drawn. "MMHMM," she responded. "Well, that's the direction it will unseal in, no matter how I seal it in," he said with a confident grin, proud of his own creation. Sakura was impressed. Naruto had thought about it all before he had gone and drawn the seal on the glove. Not what she would have expected from the dope a few weeks ago. She would have to ask him to make some for her later on. Even though she knew how to create a storage seal, she still had no clue how to draw these special ones. It was just too complicated for her. The weight seal and storage seal had been simple as it didn't require much knowledge of sealing to be able to learn them and use them. The weight seal only needed to be drawn for it to be active. The user having to push chakra into it to make it heavier and withdrawing chakra to make it lighter. Likewise, the storage seal only needed for the user to push the item with a little bit of chakra to seal it and a little bit of chakra to unseal it. The only reason she had had to learn both of these were because the seals would only allow the creator to use it. The reasons for it being created that way were understandable. A poof of smoke interrupted Sakura's thoughts as Kakashi appeared looking rather rushed. "We have a slight change of plans today," said the jounin. Sandaime has assigned an urgent mission of high priority to us. I want the both of you to pack everything for a few days and meet me at the gate in an hour." Both Sakura and Naruto went racing home, wondering what did their sensei so rushed. Chapter 4 is here. Okay, I never really intended to create anything other than what was in the manga, at least until the Shippuden episode starts, so this is going to be a challenge. Well, here goes. BTW, I do not own Naruto without Sasuke. Chapter 4. The delivery. Exactly an hour after they had split up to go and pack, the two genin of Team 7 met their sensei in front of the main Konoha gate, fully packed. "Got everything?" asked Kakashi as he eyed the two young ninja. Naruto nodded and patted the two scrolls that had taken the place of his ninja pouches, while Sakura had one going across her back along her waistline. "Kids," muttered Kakashi. "Sealing everything into scrolls." The two genin smiled. They both knew that they were the only genin of their batch to seal their equipment into scrolls or pouches. Kakashi the only jounin to use the method. Both Naruto and Sakura knew the Yondaime was Konoha's second seal master, and Kakashi, being his prized pupil, was expected to know some sealing techniques himself. "So what's the mission, Kakashi-sensei?" asked Naruto, eager to get on the way. "The Hokage has received a request from a friendly city near our border with Iwa for a team to help with their current civil war. Normally the Hokage would send a jounin team, but the earliest he can send one is at least a week later. Meanwhile, the current government is sending a scroll to the village of Iwagakure for help to quell this rebellion. And we cannot let that scroll reach the border and into the land of Earth. The Hokage wants us to intercept this messenger and make sure it does not cross the border," said Kakashi. "But won't this mission be risky, sensei? Surely Iwagakure will send their ninja to retrieve this scroll," said Sakura. "Iwa and Konoha relations are on a very tight rope. And they are still recovering from the last shinobi war. I would dare not step across that border without expecting us to declare all-out war with them. And with them being the trespassers, they cannot hope to win over the other hidden villages either. The Hokage does not expect much ninja activity above the average Chunin missing nin in that particular area," said Kakashi. "So, basically we are just going there to prevent the scroll from getting across the border?" asked Naruto. "Well, yes, though the Hokage wants us to stay with the rebels until the Jounin squad comes to relieve us," said Kakashi. "It's good really, it means you can gain experience as well as train with me for longer time when we don't have any action." Naruto nodded and Sakura stood silent. "We will get further information on what to do when we reach the city," continued Kakashi. "Shall we?" he asked before he jumped into the trees, the two genin keeping pace with him easily. It took Team 7 most of the entire day to arrive at the designated meeting spot with one of their employers. Yet the sight that greeted them was less welcoming than they expected. There was a slight skirmish going on between a group of samurai and what seemed to be a small battalion of soldiers. Kakashi called a halt to the two genin as he surveyed the fight taking place. "Why are we stopping? We should go and help them," asked Naruto as he tried to control himself from jumping into the fray. "Naruto," scolded Sakura. "Be patient. Besides, how do we even know who is who?" Naruto calmed down for a while as he looked at the ongoing battle. Sakura was right. He did not know who he should help and who he should kill. Kakashi spoke then, and both genin listened. "The ones with the red flags are our employers. Anyone with a different color is to be killed?" asked Sakura shocked. Kakashi looked at her and nodded. "Yes. We can't have the Suzaku government finding out about our presence in the city. It would ruin our plans for intercepting that scroll. A failure in our mission could mean our enemies in Iwa gaining more power." Sakura tried to resist the growing knot in her stomach, trying to convince herself that it wouldn't be hard. After all, it needed to be done for her career and for the good of the village. "Alright," said Kakashi, and the feeling of dread returned to Sakura. "I want this done, fast and quick, let no one escape." Sakura steeled herself. It needed to be done if they were going to stop another shinobi world war. The three ninja vanished from their spots on the tree. Down in the clearing below, the Kaneka rebels were trying their hardest to repel the greater number of Suzaku soldiers with little success. Out of the 10 that had originally come, there were now 5, and their hopes of surviving were looking slimmer and slimmer. Masato Kaneka, youngest child of their leader Tamashiro Kaneka, ducked under an Ajinata before he impaled the onrushing soldier with his samurai katana. He pulled the blade out, flicking the blood off of it with a quick whip of his wrist as he surveyed the battle. He wouldn't know just how many soldiers the Suzaku had sent until he had made a body count, but they had managed to take down 5 of the 10 samurai in Kaneka's small force during the surprise attack. The other 5, including himself, were making a fight out of it, making sure that the warband did not make it away with low casualties. Masato cursed Konoha. If their aid had arrived on time an hour earlier, they would have been better prepared for this onslaught. Maybe they wouldn't even have suffered any casualties. And now, they were going to die waiting for help that did not arrive. Masato saw one of his samurai fall, knocked over by the hurtling form of a Suzaku soldier, trying to shove a short sword into his armor. There was no way he was going to get to him soon enough to save him. He watched in horror as the soldier thrust the sword into the samurai with a triumphant cry, only for the samurai to be replaced by a log. A log? Thought Masato. What in the world is happening? His thoughts were answered as the silver-haired form of Kakashi appeared in front of the shocked Suzaku soldier and slashed a kunai across his throat, the blood spraying into empty space as the Jounin vanished again. Konoha had finally come. Their ninja had finally arrived at the designated spot, and look at their efficiency. With that speed, Masato knew that the Suzaku soldier had not seen the ninja until he had met the blade of the kunai. Another Suzaku soldier fell, clutching his throat, as a red figure appeared in front of him. Though this one seemed slightly slower and smaller than the silver-haired man had been. A sudden yell from nearby broke Masato out of his trance, and he managed to turn his head around to see a blade come slashing down at him. It was over. He knew it. He knew that he did not have the speed to lift up his blade in time to block the incoming slash. Before he knew it, a couple of kunai impacted with his assailant's face, spurting blood into the air. The orange army that followed the kunai had passed him before the body even hit the ground. Masato watched in amazement as the orange army soundly took on the whole remainder of the Suzaku detachment, with the occasional sighting of the silver-haired man and what seemed to Masato like a girl in a red dress. Soon, the skirmish was over. The Kaneka had suffered 5 deaths opposed to the Suzaku's 30 lost men. A proper victory, thanks to the surprise and effectiveness of the Konohinin. For now, Masato needed to go talk to the silver-haired man. He had been expecting a team of 5 grown-up men, yet had been found by a man and 2 children. There had to be an explanation. So you are telling me that the soonest you can send your Jounin team is in a week and that you 3 are all I have to work with for the whole of this week? Exclaimed Masato as if he had been cheated. Kakashi sweat dropped. He had already explained it 4 times, and this would be the 5th with this particular man. He hoped that the leader of the rebellion would be much smarter than his son. Yes, Kaneka-sama. We apologize, but had we waited for the Jounin team to assemble, then we would be allowing the Suzaku to send a messenger to Iwa. And that we cannot have. No. We cannot. Exclaimed Masato. Can you not see that that is the exact problem? How do you think a Jounin and 2 mere genin can capture or kill a messenger? He asked, flabbergasted. This Jounin and 2 mere genin took on a whole detachment that you 10 samurai had trouble with. Stated Kakashi impatiently. What makes you think that this messenger will be any luckier? He is just one man. Masato had to concede on this point. If it had not been for their intervention, they would not have survived that day. And the news of Masato's death would be circulated by the Suzaku, demoralizing the rebel forces. Mainly because the messenger will most likely be a ninja of Chunin to Jounin skill. There was no way that the Suzaku would let something that important go without a safety plan. And a backup safety plan as well. Kakashi looked Masato in the eye. If my students cannot handle him, then I will. Rest assured that we will get your messenger if only you would trust in our abilities and take us to gather some rest. Masato forced his mouth shut, driving all thoughts of a retort from his mind. He did owe them. At least enough to let them into his network and introduce him to the king, who would then decide the fate of the mission. He nodded. Fine. We move as soon as our men are done wrapping themselves up. He rarely let Kakashi look at him, so Kakashi had decided that he would not play at him or play into him. As soon as the man was gone, the Kakashi Kagebunshin vanished out of existence. The real Kakashi, meanwhile, was sitting next to an unconscious blonde boy who had gone through the mistake of using too many Kagebunshin just to kill. Sakura also sat by Kakashi's side, waiting for Naruto to get up. She had felt the effect of having a couple of clones and them dying in very simple ways, and that was a pretty nasty experience. She had also taken her first kill today, much like him, yet she would have no idea what it was like to have the memories of the number of first kill each of the clones had taken. And it had knocked him out like a light. But she did know how it felt for her. Sakura. Kakashi spoke. Are you okay? Sakura dumbly nodded. Want to talk about it? Kakashi asked. Sakura fumbled for words. There was no way she was going to be able to say it out loud. She had been aiming for his chest. A slash deep enough to take him out of the fight but not kill him. So that she could feel better by claiming it had not been her that had taken the kill. Yet, the man had gone down on one knee at the last second. One of Naruto's stray kunai had hit him right behind his knee and it had buckled. He had gone down on one knee. Low enough that her slash had opened him up from left shoulder and across his neck, the blood spurting all over. She had been lucky to have the speed to avoid the spray. She had frozen in that moment. Her world had stopped. Her brain constantly replaying the scene of her kunai entering and exiting. His skin parting way and his flesh opening up. The blood erupting from the long gash left in the now lifeless body. It had sickened her to her core. She had been lucky that Naruto's small clone army had charged in, distracting the enemy until she could recover enough to join them. And she had. She had joined them in cutting down the remnant. Even though she did not make any further kills, she had played a vital part in bringing them down to allow the samurai to finish them off. It's just that it's hard to forget to move on, she said after a while. Kakashi nodded. It does stay with you forever. I still remember each and every bit of my first kill, said the Jounin. But it is something you have to do in our career to stay alive. Sakura knew that. She knew of the dangers of the career once they had taken the test. She knew that she currently did not have the strength to take on a Jounin. She had watched the number one rookie of her batch try and fail. Yet she also knew that strength without the intent behind it was also unacceptable. The very same Jounin had fallen into a trap set by the lowest ranking genin at that time. She knew that if he had been going for the kill, showing no mercy at all, then he would not have fallen for it. And she would be the same. She had to improve and always have the intent if she wanted to be successful in her ninja career. Naruto groaned and struggled to sit up, clutching at his head as he was rising. Naruto! Exclaimed Sakura as she helped her teammate sit up. Are you okay? Ugh. My head hurts, said Naruto. Yeah. You fainted, said Sakura. All the first kills must have overloaded your brain. How do you feel? I'm okay. It's just chakra exhaustion, said the blonde boy. Chakra exhaustion, repeated Sakura. But I'm okay. Why are you exhausted? Naruto rolled up his arm and showed them a small seal on his shoulder, normally where the Anbu tattoo would have been. What is that? Asked Sakura. A chakra siphoning seal, said Naruto. It's hard for me to use up all my chakra since the new training regimen began, since I only use 10 or so Kagebunshin at a time. So I came up with this one. It would drain exactly 10% of the chakra that I use as long as it's on me. I kinda forgot to take it off as I left the village. So it's been draining you all the time since we left? Asked Sakura and the blonde boy nodded. Kakashi was once again impressed. He had yet again found another way to further himself than he already was. And that seal would also come in handy in battle, someday. What about those people you killed? Don't you feel bad over them? Asked Sakura in disbelief. Naruto lowered his head. I do. No one should die, much less be killed by someone else. But that is the way of life. And it is not the first time I have killed, said the boy. The last sentence mumbled so softly that Kakashi wouldn't have known what he had said unless he had read the boy's lips. What? Gasped Sakura, taken aback a little. Naruto had killed someone before his first mission outside of Konoha. Even though she was surprised about this piece of information, what Naruto did next surprised her even more. He stood up groggily on his two legs and walked off. Naruto. She called after him, but it appeared that he hadn't heard her. Sakura would have gone after him had she not been held by a hand on her shoulder. Let him be, Sakura, came Kakashi's voice. He's not proud of that day. He feels he was only graduated on his prowess to kill. Sakura made to start after him, but Kakashi held her again. Let him be, Sakura. He will tell you when he is ready. Come, Kaneka-sama wants to leave for his base as soon as possible, in case more parties are sent to search for the one we killed. Naruto has the sense to not wander too far. Sakura nodded and followed Kakashi. Naruto meanwhile had walked off into the trees. Far enough to be separated from the group, yet not too far as not to notice that they were packing for departure. He mentally slapped himself over and over a few times. How could he have let that little piece of information about him slip? It was something he had vowed none of his batch would ever know. To be graduated just for killing a criminal that was wanted. And the kill had been accidental as well. He had in no way meant to kill Mizuki. He had respected him once, and even though Mizuki had betrayed him in Konoha, a mere academy student had no right to kill him. Somehow, a blow from a clone had caused Mizuki to hit a rock in an awkward way, and he had died. Naruto didn't know whether it had been the rock that had killed him or whether it was the blow. All he had known was that the medics that came had pronounced him dead. And he had been given the headband soon after. True enough, the Hokage himself had said that the promotion was for showing extraordinary skill in mastering an A-rank jutsu, but Naruto could not believe it. He could not help think that it was only for his kill of a nin, much less a chunin, that was the real reason for his promotion. After Mizuki's death, Naruto had spent hours looking at his hands, imagining them blood-stained. He had thought he would never be able to kill again, but the sight of the soldiers overwhelming the Kaneka samurai had pushed him into action. And after that, the killing came easily. Too easily, he thought. He would have pondered on the thought further had not been there a call from Kakashi. They were finally on their way to meet the head of the Kaneka. It took the group approximately 2 hours to get to the rebel base located in an old abandoned fort in the hills. By Misato's explanation, this was once a training ground for the Kaneka family samurai, which were the roots of the samurai that the group had met. They had spoken little, save for the explanation of where they were going. Misato would not tell them the exact location, he said it would slow down their pace. They would be taken there anyways and they would know the location. 2 hours, thought Sakura. 2 full hours, and they had been riding their horses at full gallop, their pace only slowed by the fact that the samurai could not use chakra. As they neared, Masato slowed down the pace of the group. He explained the reason as he pulled his horse to a halt. "That, there is our base," he said, pointing to the old fort up ahead. It wasn't much from afar. Looked like about 3 stories high, with steep walls and parapets, made for a handful of guards and no real army. It's not much as you can see. If they can find us, we'd be pretty hard put to stave off an entire siege," he said as he looked at it from his vantage point. "What do we do if they find us?" asked Kakashi. "How do we defend it?" Masato grinned. "Just because they find it does not mean they can get to it. What you see before you is not normal sand." "Not normal sand? Then what kind of sand could it be?" Masato saw the confused look in the genin and explained. "What lies before you until those trees up ahead is all quicksand, except for one narrow pathway that will only allow 5 horses to travel on it abroad." "Quicksand? Like a hidden moat. And the weak-looking fort would urge the enemy into charging it full frontal, only for them to start sinking in the quicksand. So even though it looked poorly defended, it had traps laying in wait, and Sakura was sure there were more they weren't being told about." "Well, if the 3 of you would follow me, I'll guide you through this trap," said Masato as he dismounted before leading his horse by its reins, his samurai and the Konoha team following, tracing his footsteps. Kakashi noted that the path Masato took was zigzagged with abrupt turns. He had memorized the number of steps before each turn so that he would not fall into it again. It would mean that the enemy would not find it easy, even if they had found the beginning of the solid pathway, and they would learn that it was not straight the hard way. Masato noticed the silver-haired Jounin observing each step Masato took and smiled. "Yes. The enemy will find it hard to cross this. For their running steps will be larger than walking steps. And many will fall in trying to figure the zigzags. That means they will have to move slowly, making it easier for our samurai bows." "Yes," Kakashi decided as they stepped into the trees and what must have been solid ground. The Suzaku would suffer heavy losses trying to take this fort. The inside of the fort was not at all what Naruto and Sakura had anticipated. They had both imagined it as in Konoha, bustling with civilians and rarely any samurai activity. Yet, this fort was all about the samurai. Instead of the normal gates that would open inwards, as in Konoha, the Kaneka fort had a gate that was raised and lowered. Naruto found that the lower edges of this gate ended in a large number of sharpened spikes. None other than to impale the attackers that managed to get through. Kaneka-sama. How quickly can you close the gates?" he asked as they entered. Kaneka smiled and waited till everyone was in before giving out a bellowing command. One of the guards, a peasant soldier, by his dressing, let go of a rope and the gate rocketed down, slamming into the ground. All activity around the entering group ceased at the large boom that was heard, some of the younger and less experienced soldiers reaching for their swords. Sakura meanwhile was amazed at the number of people that had gathered at such a small fort. It wasn't until she had entered that she realized that it only looked small, but was also built into the side of the nearby mountain. Sakura frowned. They had survived only because they had not come across any conquering shinobi army. Any shinobi with an affinity for the earth element could easily breach these walls by tunneling through the mountain. But still, the number of people stunned her. In front of her eyes, in this large courtyard, must have been at least 200 to 300 peasants, all training and practicing under the watchful guidance of a few samurai elders. One of the samurai spoke as he passed her. "Those are not real samurai, child. They are just in training. Giving them what knowledge we can give in the short time we are given to overthrow the Suzaku." It made sense. The Suzaku, being the current government, had the country's armies to call upon, and these rebels had only themselves to put on the line for what they fought for. And it was for that only that they needed all the help they could get. The fort was rectangular in shape, just a small portion of it sticking out of the mountain. The portion being the gate, the 2 corner turrets and the small soccer field-sized courtyard. The rest, as the 2 genin found out as they went deeper in, was hidden inside the mountain. Though they found numerous large buildings cut into the wall, along with rooms and other compartment, both of them noticed that there were no women, no children, no elderly among the inhabitants of the fort. It was as if this fort was only meant for men who would go to war. A few turns through the maze-like tunnels of the fort, the 3 arrived in a spacious and well-lit cave, along with 2 futons. This I believe is for Kakashi-san and Uzumaki-san. The room next door will be Haruno-san's. I'm sorry but she is the first female to ever be housed in this fort and some things we will need for her to point out to us so that we can correct it. I'm sure not all of us know a young girl's needs," said Masato as he bowed. "Masato-san," spoke Kakashi, referring to Masato with his given name rather than his family name, since Kaneka-sama would now refer to his father. "If possible I would rather meet your father first and then scout around a bit before we lay down to rest. That is if that's okay with you." Masato nodded. "I'm sure that can be arranged, Kakashi-san. Will it be only you? Or will the children like to come along?" Naruto and Sakura both looked towards Kakashi, both eager to hear everything straight from the rebel leader's mouth. "They will come along," said Kakashi. "I'm sure they will have questions that they would like answered," finished the silver-haired Jounin. Masato nodded. "This way then," he said as he exited the room. Team 7 of Konoha were finally on their way to meeting the head of the rebel movement and what was surely to be the start of their first real mission outside of Konoha. Chapter 5. Briefing. The entrance to the audience chamber of Kaneka Tamashiro was one of the grandest entrances in the entire section of the fort carved into the mountain. Mainly because it was the only one that had proper steel doors. The rest of them were mainly wooden, easy to break through with a chakra-enhanced punch. The inside was even grander. Here, the floor was not earth, but rather, paved marble. It was laid, Kakashi knew, though where they had gotten the marble was a mystery. He had not seen marble since leaving Konoha. Parts of the cave walls were covered with red banners, all incorporating the simple Kaneka clan, symbol of a crossed katana and sheath. There was a simple red carpet, again adorned with the Kaneka clan symbol that stretched from the entrance all the way to the throne the samurai leader sat on. The throne was not so much a throne that Kakashi would call it one. It was more like a seat that the cages sit on. Yet, anything a leader and the future daimyo of a country would sit on deserved to be called a throne. "Welcome. Welcome to my humble hideout," said Tamashiro as he stood up and greeted the Konohanin. Kaneka Tamashiro was not by any means a small man. Instead he was lean and muscular, not heavy-set, but more built for speed and flexibility. The perfect mix for a Kenjutsu user, noted Kakashi. "Father, I'd like you to meet the team from Konoha." The Jounin had a Kakashi and the two genin, Uzumaki Naruto and Haruno Sakura, said Masato as he stood to his side and gestured towards the Konoha team. The whole of Team 7 bowed to the samurai leader in a show of respect for their employer. Kakashi gave Tamashiro some time to study them before he spoke. "The Hokage sends his apologies on not being able to send a team of full Jounin as you requested. The Hokage has recalled some Jounin from some other less urgent duties and the team is expected to be here by the start of next week," said the silver-haired Jounin. "In the meantime, the Hokage would like to offer my team services to you in your attempt to intercept the treaty on its way to Iwa as we speak." "Ah. The treaty," said the leader of the rebel forces as Kakashi stood up from his bow. "The caravan in which the treaty bearer to Iwa is traveling in will be passing within a few miles of where we are currently situated in 2 days' time. The caravan is heavily guarded, with about 200 armed soldiers guarding all sides. Our sources, however, have not been able to identify the treaty bearer amongst the soldiers or civilians in this caravan." The information did not please Kakashi, nor his two genin. It would be very difficult to prevent the treaty from escaping into Earth Country if they did not know who had the treaty. And the hardest work would be to find who had it. If indeed any of them had it at all. Being a prank master himself, Naruto knew that he would not send something so valuable under so flashy a guard. The Uzumaki Naruto of the past would have blurted out that fact, but the boy he was now knew that Kakashi would have thought the same thing and held the statement to himself, knowing that there must be a reason behind it. "How are we going to stop it from going across the border if there are so many soldiers?" asked Naruto. Tamashiro smiled. "We'll help you, of course. Everyone in this very fort is currently preparing for the assault to take place the day after tomorrow. It is during this assault that I expect the three of you to use the fighting as a distraction to kill and burn the treaty headed towards Iwa." "But Kaneka-sama, how would we do that if we do not know who has the treaty?" asked Sakura. It was Masato who spoke this time. "If it was so easy for you to take on the raiding party that wanted to disrupt our meeting, then it should be easy for you to take on the whole caravan with our help. The only reason we found it so easy was because they were unprepared for our entrance," said Naruto, calmly stating the facts. "It would be foolish to assume they won't be as unprepared as next time. They will be expecting us to enter the fray," continued Kakashi, taking over for the blonde boy. "They are right, Masato," spoke Tamashiro. "We cannot expect the Suzaku to fall for the same trick twice. It might cost us too many lives." He then turned to the team and spoke. "My apologies for our poor information and planning skills. I had not thought that my son, nor our tacticians would have planned it so carelessly. Allow me some time to contact my sources directly and gather the needed information so that we can properly plan and execute it. Kaneka-sama. If we may we be allowed free roam of the nearby land? I would like to be able to train the genin in an open environment," asked Kakashi. Tamashiro nodded. "You may. I will send for you once I have the proper plan laid out," he said, nodding the team's dismissal. Kakashi nodded and walked out of the chamber, his two genin following close behind. "This doesn't feel right," said Naruto as soon as they were behind closed doors and the privacy jutsu was up. "What doesn't feel right?" questioned Sakura. "Why would anyone in their right mind send such a valuable document in such a flashy way?" he said, finally giving voice to the question. "If it were me, I'd use the caravan as a distraction to attract the larger force of the rebels to it. Hopefully end it before the treaty even reached Iowa. You are saying that it's a trap? Asked Sakura, her mouth wide open. It very well could be. Said Kakashi, turning both their attention to him. Think about it. The Kaneka leader cannot get any information on the treaty bearer. What if it's because the treaty bearer is not in that caravan? It struck Sakura then and there. What if it was indeed true? The caravan would be a much slower-paced mode of transport, especially for such a vital document that needs to be delivered with haste. Instead, a lone traveler would make much better time if he was on his own schedule. So what, shouldn't we go tell the Kaneka? She asked. No. Kakashi said. The caravan will be nearby in 2 days. If so, a lone rider on a horse will already be nearby right now and will have passed us by that time. The only reason the caravan is coming is because they want to finish it before the Jounin come. I don't understand. Said Naruto, frowning. There is a spy amongst the Kaneka. How else would the raiding party have known exactly where to attack the meeting party? The Suzaku must now know that it is only 1 Jounin and 2 Genin that have come to help the Kaneka. They want to end this before the Jounin squad comes. It definitely would be easier for the Suzaku to take out the Kaneka with only 1 Jounin and 2 Genin fresh out of the academy rather than a squad of 5 full Jounin. It was the best chance that the Suzaku would have to stifle the resistance before they grew stronger. So how do we go about this? Asked the blonde boy. We need to sneak out tomorrow and scout out our surroundings. There is no way anyone can get to the Iowa border without coming within a few miles of here. As for now, get your rest. We will need it for what we need to do tomorrow. Sakura had trouble sleeping that night. She could not get out of her head how Naruto had reacted to his amount of kills. And the knowledge that they weren't his first worried her even more. Who had been there to help him through that first kill? Who had he talked to? How had he gotten through it? Had he gotten through it at all? And this was further confounded with the fact that they would need to do more killing in the upcoming days. With the assault on the caravan and also their plan on intercepting the treaty barrier coming up, there was no way either of them were going to come away without killing. In these thoughts, not even once did she think about her own first kill that had happened earlier that day. The next day began early and abruptly for both Genin as Kakashi woke them up from their sleep at 4 a.m. in the morning. What? Was the first word that Naruto managed to mumble out as he was roused. The blonde boy opened his eyes to see the form of Kakashi wrapping his kunai and shuriken holster to his legs. Wake up. We are going scouting. Said the Jounin as he stood up from the chair. Sakura is already in the toilet. Scouting? Asked Naruto, still dazed. Yeah. We're going to go around the nearby villages. See if we can find anything and anyone suspicious. Said the silver-haired Jounin. How do we know who is suspicious and who is not? Asked Sakura as she came out of the bathroom fully dressed and drying her hair with a towel. Naruto groggily stood up and collected his clothes before he went into the same bathroom Sakura had just come from. He could still hear Kakashi and Sakura talk as he quickly dressed. We'll know when we start searching for him. Said Kakashi. Naruto came out of the toilet, gloves on, everything set. Kakashi-sensei. How many villages do you think would be around here? He asked. It was then that Sakura started to worry about how much of their time they would have to spend trying to find this treaty bearer. Naruto had recently started believing it was better to be prepared for any situation, yet nothing could have prepared him for the situation they were currently in. Well. At least we can consider this training. Said Sakura as she tried to lighten up the mood. It had appeared that the solid path of ground had shifted since they had entered the village. Either that or there were more similar trees in the small oasis that hid the entrance to the fort. Now, the 3 Konohinin were in a circle with a radius of 3 feet, surrounded on all sides by quicksand. It had been a mystery how they had gotten into that position in the first place. Kakashi thought about it for a second before he heard Naruto yelp and quickly turned around to see the boy flail around as one of his feet sank into the quicksand. It took both Kakashi and Sakura to pull him out of it for the second time that day. Naruto. It's quicksand. You can't just walk on it. Scolded Sakura as she looked down at the heaving boy. Naruto was about to string together a number of apologies when Kakashi spoke. Naruto, how did you get that far in? He asked. Naruto looked up at him and Sakura scoffed. He didn't get that far, Kakashi-sensei. Said the girl. No, he didn't, but he managed 1 step. It was during his second step that his first foot sank. Said the Jounin. True. Both of Naruto's legs had been in quicksand when they had pulled him out. If it had been only 1 leg, he could and should have been able to do that himself. So tell us, Naruto. Nudged Sakura. Well. You sink in quicksand, right? And you also sink in water, right? So I thought maybe the water walking would work on this as well. But it doesn't. At least not long enough for you to take a second step. Interesting, thought Kakashi, while Sakura was amazed that Naruto had even thought to try that out. So this is his real self, thought the Jounin as he gave the quicksand a thoughtful glance. Sakura watched as Kakashi gingerly took a step onto the quicksand. And like Naruto's, his foot landed on solid ground. However, the next step Kakashi took was also on solid ground, and it was exactly where Naruto had sunk earlier. "Sensei, how are you doing that?" asked Sakura, her mouth agape in wonder. "Easy. I used Naruto's hint on water walking plus the tip of tree climbing. The trick is to keep the sand underneath your feet solid by the amount of chakra you push through your feet," said the Jounin. "Do we have that much chakra and control to do that?" asked Sakura. "We will have to see. Besides, you can consider this training. It will improve your control and your reserves," said Kakashi. Naruto was the first to jump up at the mention of training. Though he still retained his eagerness to fight and train, he was much calmer and rarely took unnecessary risks. The proof was evident here as Naruto carefully stepped out like Kakashi instead of the jumping in he would have done a month ago. A few minutes later, the trio were running on the quicksand towards one of the 5 villages on the outskirts of the fort. They were the only places between the capital city and the Iwa border that a man or a small group could stop to rest and resupply. "Sensei," called Sakura as they entered the town under simple henge. "Why are we here? This is the village farthest from the caravan. Do you think the treaty bearer would be here?" Kakashi calmly put his hand in his pocket and pulled out his favorite orange-colored book. "Yes. The farthest point from the caravan would be the least monitored by the Kanaka spies. And therefore it will be the easiest place for the treaty bearer to hide. How do we know if we find him? I mean, how can we differentiate him from any other guy?" asked Naruto. "To be honest, even I don't know. But the real reason we are here is to meet someone who might know," said Kakashi as he walked into the small town. The 2 genin followed behind, both of them clearly confused about what their sensei had planned for them or for their mission. Kakashi barely looked up from his book as he spoke. "We are here to meet our legendary spy master, the one who keeps track of the Konoha spy network for the Hokage. If anyone can, he is the one that can point us towards our runaway treaty bearer." "Runaway treaty bearer," thought Sakura. Kakashi almost made it sound as if the treaty had run away from them. "So who is this legendary spy master?" asked Naruto. Not only was he curious as to what made the man legendary, but he also wanted to fill in the blanks about the world-renowned nin of Konoha. "I'm sure you two must have heard about the legendary Toad Sage, Jiraiya of the Sannin," said Kakashi. Sakura's eyes went wide at the mention of the Sannin. They were the legendary 3 of Konoha that had held their own against Salamander Hanzo of Rain, where an entire army could not. The Sannin were made up of Orochimaru, the Snake Sannin, who had betrayed the village and gone off in search of self-glory. Jiraiya, the Toad Sage, the one who had trained the young Namikaze Minato, the one who would come to be known as the Yellow Flash of Konoha and the Yondaime Hokage. And last but not least, her idol as a Kunoichi, the Slug Sannin, Senju Tsunade, hailed as the best medic nin the world had ever seen. She had vanished from the village soon after the latest shinobi war had ended. Someone tell me which war this was, and here they were going to meet one of the very legendary Sannin at the mere age of 14. Sorry if this is not their real age. 12 is a bit too young for them to have any romantic interests for me, so I thought I'd age them a few years to something more acceptable. Where will we meet him?" asked Sakura, eager in anticipation for their meeting. She wondered what kind of a person he would be. Tall, strong and handsome just like the Yondaime had been. Or whether he would be old and wizened like the Sandaime. Sakura's question got no answer as the Jounin just kept on walking towards a certain district of the town. Kakashi-sensei?" asked Naruto. "Why are we going towards the red light district?" By the tone of Naruto's voice, Kakashi could figure that Naruto was totally confused as to why they were heading in that particular direction. It was expected, considering neither genin knew of Jiraiya's tendencies. "To find our contact," said Kakashi simply as he walked onto the road famous in this particular town for its bars and call girls. "What?" exclaimed Sakura as she stopped. "We are going to meet one of the legendary Sannin in a brothel." "What's wrong with a brothel?" came a voice. The 2 genin turned to see a large white-haired man come towards them. The man wore his white hair long. He wore a rather obvious red costume and he had a scroll on his back. But what gave away his identity to the team were not his clothes or his behavior. But rather the protector he wore on his forehead with the kanji symbol for oil. "Jiraiya-sama," said Kakashi with a bow. "Kakashi-kun," returned the man. Both Naruto and Sakura were bug-eyed. This man that the both of them had seen peeping at the Konoha bathhouses and had seen countless women chase after being found, was really the Toad Sage. "You?" said both Naruto and Jiraiya at once, pointing fingers towards each other. "What are you doing here, brat? Got nothing to do than spy on me?" asked the old man as he narrowed his eyes at the young genin. "I'm not spying on you," yelled Naruto. "It's not my fault that you suck at hiding. Besides, I'm on a mission," he said. "Be one of your genin, Kakashi?" asked Jiraiya, to which Kakashi's sweat dropped before nodding. "Ah. You are on your own on this one," Jiraiya said to the Jounin as he turned around to leave. It was Sakura's turn to yell at Jiraiya. "You can't just abandon some of your fellow ninja." "Fellow ninja?" You two are just a bunch of genin. Maybe stronger than the rest because I do not see a third member. But nevertheless you are genin. There is no guarantee whether you will live through this mission. If you do survive till you are chunin, then you can call me a fellow ninja," said Jiraiya. In an instant Sakura was above the Sannin, her kunai drawn and rushing in towards his head. She was sure that she would get him when his hand rose up to grab her hand in one swift motion. "Impressive speed. Considering you have gravity seals on you," said Jiraiya as he held Sakura off the floor with just one hand. The Sannin made to flick her off before he felt Naruto appear behind him. Jiraiya disappeared, dropping Sakura with an unceremonious thump the moment Naruto released the shuriken he had unsealed from his glove. The shuriken barely missed the falling girl, Sakura desperately trying to turn away from the incoming projectiles. "Don't assume I haven't seen the seals on your gloves, boy. I have seen all. Including the one you keep hidden." Naruto's eyes widened. He knew about the Kyuubi. There was only one way to finish this, even though it would only be temporary. Naruto resealed the kunai he had in his hand before he crossed his fingers in the familiar ram seal. The blonde boy grinned. "I can beat you by myself," he exclaimed before he yelled out. "Warik no Jutsu." Immediately Naruto transformed into the henge he had started calling Naruko, the clouds just barely covering her most private areas. The effect he expected was immediate, blood fountaining out from the Sannin's nose, sending him flying into the air. Naruto heard two thumps as both Kakashi and Jiraiya landed on the ground not too far from each other. Sakura looked at Naruto as if the jutsu had to have affected him as well. "What?" asked Naruto as he calmly hauled Kakashi to where Jiraiya lay. Sakura shook her head. "You are teaching me that jutsu someday," she said, and Naruto had the decency to blush. An hour later, Kakashi and Jiraiya were sitting on a log outside the town, watching the two genin spar against each other. "Did you give them those seals?" asked Jiraiya. Kakashi shook his head. "No. Sandaime-sama gave Naruto some scrolls. He taught Sakura the sealing and the gravity seal. I'm not sure if she's any interested in the rest." "That kid," said Jiraiya eyeing Naruto. "Really takes after his father, doesn't he?" Kakashi nodded. "Down to the very hatred of perverts." Jiraiya groaned. It had been this exact hatred that had caused Kushina and Minato to meet. In one way, it was good. He had never seen Minato happier, yet he also had to give up peeping. There was no way even the Sannin could outrun the yellow flash. And now the fourth son had developed the perfect anti-pervert jutsu. Kakashi thought back to the jutsu. He prided himself in his ability to not fall for something twice, yet he knew that he would fall prey to that jutsu more than any other he ever would. "Your guy is still in the village as we speak," said the Sannin as he took a sip of his sake saucer. "Though it will be difficult to get to him here." The Jounin looked at the Sannin. "This is a mainly Suzaku town, their supporters outnumbering the Kaneka supporters. You will not find him alone to take him down. And we cannot afford any civilian casualties. Especially at the hands of Konohinin. What do you suggest we do?" asked Kakashi. "The bearer is readying himself for tomorrow's attack. It is at that timing that he will make a break for it while all Kaneka-I are rooted onto the battle. It is at this time that he is also weakest. You must find a way to stop him, burn the scroll and still get back in time to prevent the massacre of the Kaneka forces. If the Suzaku lose this entire force, they will have lost the war," said Jiraiya as he shook the bottle of sake trying to squeeze out as many drops as he could. "Ah well. I got to get going," said the Sannin as he stood up. "The network doesn't run itself, you know." Once the genin had finished their sparring, the entire Team 7 spent the day tailing the treaty bearer and memorizing his moves. After all, it would be important for them to be able to recognize him anywhere, in any disguise, for he would not use a jinjutsu, thus allowing them to sense it. On the way back to the fort, Kakashi pondered the information the Sannin had given him. It meant that they would need to go full out on the messenger from the beginning. No mercy, no quarter, no chance. Once back at the fort, the Kaneka leader called for them as well as some of his most trusted advisors. "My sources have obtained newer and more dependable information about the Suzaku caravan," he said as he ushered them in, near a table that was set up with what seemed like an overview of the terrain. "They believe that the entire caravan will pass under this exact mountain sometime around noon. And it gives us the perfect opportunity for a devastating ambush," said the rebel leader, the pride of coming up with a plan evident in his voice. "We will position half of our troops on this ridge here," said Tomashiro pointing to a line somewhat high up on the mountain. "The rest of the men will be positioned in the woods here." Kakashi wasn't surprised to see the woods situated there. It was the perfect spot to ambush an ambush. "When they reach this bottleneck, our men will charge down the slope with our weapons drawn. With the sun in their eyes, they will not see our troops until we are on top of them. The confusion of the sudden attack will surely cause major losses among the Suzaku. And once they are fully focused on us, our troops from the forest will smash into their rear, breaking them once and for all." The short speech and the pump of the fist into the air raised a small cheer from those who had gathered around. Kakashi had to give it to the man that he knew how to raise the morale of his army. To give them high hopes of success, to instill that determination to achieve victory in a battle, was no less a feat than winning one itself. It was a good plan. One that would work devastatingly well had the Suzaku not known of the plan beforehand. Kakashi was sure that by the end of the day, the trap would be set. Team 7 hung back after the troop leaders had left. There still was the matter of the treaty bearer to be discussed. Tamashiro closed the large steel doors behind them as the last one of his officers filed out. Once they were alone, Tamashiro took out a book and turned to a page before handing it to Kakashi. Kiram Kyoko. Missing Nin from the village of Grass. Skills unknown. We believe her to be the one bearing the treaty. We assume that she will flee once the forest troops smash their lines, trusting her chakra-enhanced speed to deliver her out of harm's way. Trust me, she will make for Iowa. They have promised her that they would take her in once she has delivered the treaty to them. Follow her when she does flee, and 3-on-1 will surely gain you success. Hanaka-sama. Spoke Kakashi. When will we be departing for the mountain? I assume you would like us to join the first wave in. Do as much damage as we can. Tamashiro smiled. You are a smart one, Haddock-san. He said, nodding his head in approval. Yes. You are right. I would like the three of you in the first attack. Kill as many Suzaku as you possibly can before you go after her. Make the battle easier for us. Tamashiro paused. The troops will be leaving at 8 tomorrow morning. I would like it if you could join us then. Kakashi nodded. If you will, Kanaka-sama, my team and I would like to prepare and rest for tomorrow. Even us ninja are human and succumb to things like fatigue. He said with a long bow before he ushered the two genin out with himself. Neither of the trio spoke until they were back in their room and the privacy jutsu up. How do we get the treaty bearer, Kakashi-sensei? Asked Sakura as soon as they were seated. There is no way we can be at two places at once, is there? Actually there is. Spoke Kakashi. How? Asked Sakura. The Kagebunshin. Pointed out Kakashi. The two genin's eyes widened. The Kagebunshin. How could they have both forgotten that jutsu? Especially Naruto himself. It was his only jutsu so far. But that means I will have to stay with the army. Said Naruto. If I am not with the Kagebunshin, I cannot replace them as soon as they are low on chakra. Naruto was right. If he was not with the army, then he could not keep forming Kagebunshin to take their place. And if he could not do that, the Suzaku spy would know that the team was missing. Naruto. You aren't the only one who can use the technique. Said Kakashi. Surely Kakashi wasn't thinking of keeping Sakura with the army. Even though she could perform the jutsu, he had to know that she could only form two at best and still be alright for battle. The next words that their sensei said stunned them. I'll stay and cover you too. Said the Cyclops. But Kakashi-sensei. Exclaimed Sakura. We need you with us. Yes. Naruto added. What if the bearer is too strong for us? He asked. Naruto. Said Kakashi softly. Remember our survival exam? He asked and both genin nodded. The two of you managed to trap me and I'm one of the top jounin in the entire village of Konoha. Together you can take this bearer down. I have faith in you. Said the man. Then why don't you leave us with the army and take on the bearer yourself? Asked Sakura. Surely the battle alongside the army would be easier for the two of them than the chase after the bearer. No. Then the Sandaime would have sent me alone to catch him. This is a mission handed to the genin of Team 7 by the cage of our village. I am your sensei. Me, completing this will do you two no good. There was a brief moment of respite before Kakashi continued, his eyes gazing at the two genin he had trained for the past 2 weeks. I know you two can handle yourselves in a fight with ordinary soldiers. But unless you two catch the bear, the Hokage will consider this a failed mission. Besides, there is also the matter of the Takebetsu jounin with the army. You two do not have the experience to take her on, while keeping an eye out for anyone looking to take advantage of your distraction. Kakashi made a valid point. It was indeed their mission to catch the bear, but also they could not afford to return a team member short. There was no way that they were going to find an argument against Kakashi's explanation. That's some sleep. Said the jounin. You two have a tiring day ahead, it's vital you get all the rest you can. Sakura stood up and walked into her room. Too absorbed in thought that she didn't hear Naruto say goodnight. Tomorrow would be a busy day and a nervous day at that. It would be the very first time they did something regarding their mission without their sensei to guide them. Chapter 6, Rush Hour. The morning brought with it all the hustle and bustle you would expect in a military stronghold. The entire Kanaka army was forming into ranks, each man strapping their armor onto their bodies, arming themselves with weapons varying from katana, kodachi to long naginatas and spears. Some even armed themselves with their hunting bows and quivers of arrows. Neither Naruto nor Sakura had seen such a mobilization of forces in their lives. Kakashi had, in his earlier years as a ninja. He had been in one such mobilization, along with his teammates Uchiha Obito and Rin. The trio of Konohinin watched as the Kaneka samurai stepped out of their dojo, fully in samurai armor, ready to give their lives to the cause. Their armor plates were brilliant red, much similar to the color of blood. Each of them shone with a new coat of polish, as if they were brand new suits. What astonished the two genin were how they held themselves. Though they were short in stature, each of the Kaneka samurai appeared tall and strong, intimidating figures even when not in combat. They could only imagine what would happen when those very same blood-red apparitions weaved through the enemy numbers, killing and maiming. Tamashiro Kaneka and his samurai stepped onto a dais in front of the whole rebel army before he raised his arms. "Now's your chance," spoke Kakashi. "Remember what we talked about this morning." The two genin immediately vanished, having released their gravity seals, deciding to go over the wall and straight for the town they had found the bearer at. They needed to be fast, arrive before he left, trail him and take him out at the most opportune moment. Time was of the essence in this particular instance. Their mission had finally begun, and they could not afford to botch it. Kakashi walked alongside the trudging makeshift army of rebels as they made their way towards the mountain and their designated ambush site, the members walking alongside their supply carts. The pace of their travel was excruciating for Kakashi. Being a fully trained ninja, he had always been someone to use his speed and agility to travel quickly. Starting from when he was a genin with his sensei and especially now, with his two genin who kept on increasing their speed every single day. And this pace was very boring for Kakashi. Besides, he could not keep his clones from speaking the entire trip. It would seem weird for the two genin not to speak. And the moment the two clones spoke would be the moment that the army knew that these were not the real genin. Kakashi cursed at himself silently. It hadn't felt right to send the two alone, the both of them being so new and green to the world, and I still didn't feel right. He knew he should have sent a clone with them. Even though it would be just to guide them and not help in combat, he should have sent one. Kakashi saw Tamashiro stop just up ahead and order a rest for the convoy. This was bad. In one way it would give the Suzaku more time to set up their ambush, and two it would mean that he would have to be much more careful with his clones. But however, it also gave his genin some time to finish their real mission and get back to him. Kakashi walked over to the Kaneka leader, bowing before he spoke. "Kaneka-sama," he said. "Since we are at a rest, I would like it if you would allow me and my team to step away for a while in order to do some pre-battle training. Though my team has had experience in battle as I'm sure your son has told you, they still are young and are not prepared for the massive battle coming up." Tamashiro nodded, too occupied with the dealings with his force than to really bother with whatever he thought the Jounin was up to. Kakashi didn't complain though, the silver-haired Cyclops just walked over to his clones before speaking in his normal low tones. The three of them jumped off into the trees, not many of the Kaneka forces paying them any attention. Even if the spy thought that Kakashi would stumble upon the trap, there would be nothing he could do. A messenger would simply not get to the Suzaku camp in time. The genin had found the treaty bearer almost just as soon as they reached the town. It had been easy. Too easy perhaps. Too easy that Naruto considered this to be a decoy. "Naruto?" whispered Sakura as she lay on the roof just next to him. "Why would this be a decoy? I mean, the caravan is a decoy big enough to attract every single fly. And as far as they know it is working." True. They were sure that the spy had not sensed anything wrong with the situation. If he had, Naruto knew that the treaty bearer would have been long gone. The treaty in the hands of Iwa and its shinobi forces mustering against this small rebel force that would then be crushed without a single ounce of mercy. Yet he could not shake the gut feeling he had about this. The two genin had come upon the bearer and a few of the town citizens just inside the town walls. They had had no trouble recognizing him. And sure enough he was preparing for a journey. However, so were the other 5 citizens present with the bear, and they both knew that all 6 of them were in concert. "Sakura," spoke Naruto. "I just don't understand why the others would be leaving alongside him if they were not a decoy. Or maybe one of them has the treaty and the bearer is another decoy. It's possible." Sakura noticed with a hint of sadness that he had stopped calling her Sakura-chan. It had annoyed her once that he was so loving when she had not wanted any attention from him at all. But now that they were closer, she missed that particular nickname. Naruto made a valid point. With the other 5 traveling alongside the bear, it meant that any of them could have the treaty, and it was very likely that once they had a hint of an attack, they would all split up. And it would be very difficult to catch each single one before they reached the border. "What do you think we should do?" she asked. She had the book smarts. She knew she could answer each and every question that came to her from the academy textbooks. But she also knew that she was no strategist. That she would not be able to come up with a plan that would ensnare each and every one of the small traveling party. Besides, it had been Naruto that had come up with the plan to get the bells from Kakashi. "Genjutsu?" he said simply. "Genjutsu?" she echoed. "Yes," he replied. "Similar to the one we used on Kakashi-sensei during the survival test. We cast a genjutsu on them as they leave the gates. He sat up and pointed towards a clump of trees a bit further from the village. We steer them in there. And we take them down one by one. Create the missing member as part of the Genjutsu and let them continue. We can keep up with them if we leave a Kagebunshin to search their fallen comrade. I'm pretty sure they won't be able to detect or dispel the Genjutsu on them. At least not until each and every single one of them has been taken down. The plan was a bit simple, thought Sakura, yet it was solid. They could always alter the plan according to the situation later on. So she nodded and prepared herself for the minor illusion she was about to use on the unsuspecting group as they walked out the town gates. Kakashi sat in a branch overlooking the Suzaku ambush camp set inside the forest. His gamble in heading here had paid off, and he had located what seemed to be a large number of Suzaku Imperials, preparing to ambush the Kaneka. He sighed before he scratched his head. He didn't quite like killing people that stood no chance against him, but it had to be done. For the greater good of the people of the country and for the greater good of Konoha. The silver-haired nin stood up on the branch before forming a seal. The only words he spoke were Suiton. Kurigaku no Jutsu. Before he disappeared into the deep mist that encompassed the camp. The Kaneka army would later come upon the remains of the camp, none of the tents nor equipment touched or destroyed, yet the bodies of at least 200 Suzaku Imperials strewn about. All of them had died by a clean cut to a vital body part, mostly to the throat. The Kaneka history books would say that whoever killed the Suzaku had done a clean, quiet and efficient job, as none of the Imperials showed any evidence of fighting back. The books would also state that the man responsible for the deaths had not been found and had no connection to them. The ninja they had hired for the rebellion had been present with them the entire time of the march, and that had been when the massacre had taken place. Little did they know that the entire team that had traveled with them had been Kagebunshin left by the Konoha son of the White Fang. Everything was a blur of green as Naruto and Sakura entered the small patch of forest. The Genjutsu had been a success, and Sakura was sure that the bearer and his company knew nothing of it. The first kill came easy, shurikens speeding from the treetops and embedding themselves in the face of the rearmost rider. Sakura could only wince as she saw the man drop like a sack of rock, his place already filled in by an illusion she created. It was straining work on her behalf, at least it would be when it was over. Though she had almost perfect chakra control, she had very little experience with such massive genjutsu, and to keep it up would drain her of every drop of chakra she had. The second man fell soon after, kunai in throat as Naruto pushed him off his horse. A simple henge changed the blonde boy into the man he had killed, as well as relieved Sakura of some of the illusions she would have to create. Sakura noticed that a Kagebunshin would immediately appear once their intended targets had fallen, immediately setting to search the fallen body. A nice tactic, one that would save them valuable time they could use to follow and incapacitate the rest of the treaty troop. The third man died by Sakura's own hands as she appeared behind him before slitting his throat. Another simple henge in his place was taken once again. The fourth man to die died one of the most gruesome deaths that she had ever seen up to date as Naruto triggered the trap using a kunai. A sharpened trunk punched through the torso, the blood from the large hole, spattering all over the two remaining Suzaku and the two genin. Sakura's genjutsu faltered as the bile rose to her throat, the two remaining Suzaku noticing that their number had suddenly been cut by two. The two immediately split up, veering in two opposite directions in order to throw off the pursuers. Both Naruto and Sakura went after one each, both of them abandoning the horses in preference of their chakra-enhanced speed. The Suzaku were fast. Naruto had to admit. They were managing to put their speed to the test as the two Imperials raced to exit the forest before they themselves fell prey to the chasing genin. Naruto dodged an incoming block of wood. One of the many traps the two genin had set up as they had their Kagebunshin survey the group. The traps had been prepared as a way to kill and maybe even disable the Imperial movement through the forest, making it easier for the two genin to take them down. Yet, they were being more of a nuisance than a help. Sakura was the first to take down her Imperial, going for the simple slicing of the horse's tendons. The horse's front legs buckled as it fell, the momentum transferred to the man, sending him flying. Sakura saw the man land and heard the sickening crunch as his neck broke from the impact. It hadn't been the way she had imagined she would kill the man, yet it was still acceptable. Naruto's Imperial went under more torture than his counterpart. Naruto's first two kunai embedding in his right arm as the man maneuvered in order to dodge the incoming projectiles. His rein arm disabled, the man had less control over his speeding mount, the horse swerving all over, making it even harder for the blonde genin. When the Imperial finally came off his horse, he came off via a kick to the face by the enraged young genin. The man landed on his left side, breaking both his left leg and left arm in the process. Naruto saw the fear in the man's eyes as the Imperial watched the young boy slash his throat. It was one thing to die at the hands of a young boy without knowing, but Naruto couldn't imagine the feeling that the man went through as he watched helplessly. Neither of Naruto's men had the treaty, each of the clones turning up empty-handed. Naruto himself turned up nothing, however Sakura fared much better with her latest kill. The scroll had been coiled around the man's midriff and he had not been the designated bearer. A mind signal or two later, the clones converged to one point, each with their victims' bodies lofted on their shoulders. They would leave no evidence of such an ambush or even such a treaty party even existing. The two genin set fire to the bodies of the 6 men and left the forest in search of the rebel army, the treaty safely sealed into one of Naruto's scrolls. Their mission was complete. Now, they needed to report to their sensei and then help the Kaneka rebels establish their dominance in the civil war. The trap had been set. Kakashi almost felt sorry for the approaching caravan. Little would they know that their intended plan had failed, and Kakashi knew it would have been a full rout of the Suzaku Imperials had it not been for the Takebetsu Jounin. The Kaneka forces on the mountain tensed as the Suzaku caravan inched closer and closer. The timing of the first assault would be important as well as where it hit. If they hit it in the front, it would allow the rear of the caravan to flank the rebels, using their numbers as an aid to rally themselves. It would be the same if they hit it in the rear. The perfect place to hit the caravan would be in the middle. It would cause the front of the caravan to turn around, costing them valuable time coming to the other's defense. It would also cause the rear to fall into confusion once the chain of command had been cut. Once again, the timing of the assault would be important. The caravan consisted of what appeared to be a few supply carts, surrounded by numerous amounts of organized Imperials. A troop of about 40 Imperials led the caravan followed by another troop, after which came the carts. The carts were ringed by at least 2 more troops. The last 2 troops bringing up the rear. The Kaneka mountain top 4 started inching their way downwards the moment the head of the caravan reached the end of the ridge. A slow crouch walk soon turned into a full sprint, the samurai leaping off the ridge in full strides. The samurai unleashed a hail of arrows while in midair, each of their lethal warheads finding a target. The peasants that came behind them, slamming into the Suzaku lines as if a hammer was slamming into a brick wall. The Suzaku line broke, numbers of them falling under the sudden onslaught. Kakashi and his 2 Kagebunshin entered the fray behind the peasants, the Jounin heading straight towards the grass nin. The Suzaku line recovered quickly, confirming Kakashi's suspicions of their knowledge of the attack, the head of the caravan immediately turning around and rushing the Kaneka samurai. Some of them headed towards the carts, unveiling behind the thick cloth some sort of siege engine. Think of a ballista. Kakashi gave the operator no time to settle into the engine, immediately releasing a few kunai that toppled the man from the turret. He could spare no time to pick off the rest, as the Takebetsu Jounin had settled into her stride, slowly but surely picking off Kaneka numbers with simple kunai throws. Kakashi's Kagebunshin made short work of any Suzaku to step into their path, slitting throats and stabbing vital organs, as if they were slabs of meat hung in a butcher's shop, careful enough not to use ninjutsu. It was then that the flanking Kaneka forces from the forest slammed into the flank of the Suzaku Imperials. Caught in between 2 attacking forces, the Suzaku line crumpled into a very disorganized rabble of men, each fighting for their own lives and with no sort of coherency. This proved to be their final minutes as the Kaneka samurai easily cut them down, lessening the Suzaku numbers to a handful, along with the grass Jounin. Kakashi barely managed to twist around as a very large arrow pierced the air which he had been a moment ago. He saw one of the Kaneka samurai get hit by the arrow, sending the man flying through the air. More arrows came flying through the air, throwing Kaneka soldiers to the ground, killing some outright. Kakashi managed to look towards the direction the caravan had come from and saw another separate convoy of Suzaku Imperials and their siege engines positioned there. Kakashi's eyes met those of Tamashiro Kaneka and the rebel leader nodded. Kakashi knew how strongly Tamashiro felt about this cause and knew that he would give his life if need be for the freedom of his people. The rebel leader drew his sword and charged the new Suzaku line, his followers charging behind him, each yelling their own battle cry. Kakashi stood still, indecisive for a moment. He wanted to charge the siege engines alongside the Kaneka, minimize their losses, yet that would leave their flank open to the Takebetsu Jounin, who could inflict the same amount of casualties as the siege engines could. He felt 2 familiar chakra sources nearby and his mind was made up instantly. His genin would have no trouble with the siege engines, however, the grass nin had to go, willingly or not. With a silent deep breath, the Konoha Jounin shunshine towards the grass nin at top speed. Tamashiro Kaneka slammed into the Suzaku lines along with his ever-faithful samurai with force he had never applied before. He felt his katana shatter under the impact, leaving no amount of sharpened metal on his wooden handle. The veteran samurai immediately snatched up the sword his opponent had dropped, rolling onto his feet, slashing a man's hamstrings in the process. The man fell, a guttural cry emitting from his throat before the same sword silenced it forever. Tamashiro twisted the sword, flicking all the blood on the blade into the face of an onrushing Imperial, causing the man to falter and wipe at his face. It was all the time the Kaneka leader needed to drive the point of his newly acquired weapon between the ribs of the man. Tamashiro turned around to see one of his samurai fall, a giant arrowhead embedded between his shoulder blades, its metal point sticking out from his chest. Someone needed to take care of the engines, it was the only thing that made their forces equal in this battle. To his left, Masato was spinning and slashing his way through a few Suzaku who helped to outnumber him. To his right, the peasant army that had come to him for guidance were holding their own against the fully trained Imperials. His samurai, though lessened by a few, were slicing him a path towards the siege engines and who appeared to be the leader of this particular expedition. A dead camp in the forest, the entire caravan they had ambushed, and this new troop that equaled the caravan in number. It seemed as if the Suzaku were also hoping to end the civil war in this single battle as well. Tamashiro wondered where the two Konoha genin had disappeared to in the fight. They had been present at the start, their help invaluable in shocking the Imperials. The Jounin, he knew, had gone after the grass Newtonin that the Suzaku had hired. Yet the genin were nowhere to be seen. "Father!" came a yell from Masato, and Tamashiro whirled around to see one of the siege engines point at him. If it fired, he knew he stood no chance of surviving that giant arrowhead. There was a sudden flash of orange as one of the two Konoha genin appeared on top of the engine, slashing the operator's face. It was then that he noticed that none of the other engines had operators in them either, the pink-haired girl dodging and weaving through the Imperials as she used her shorter stature and the flexibility that came with her age to cut and slash them where it hurt. Tamashiro had never had time to watch the Konoha do battle. But the few moments he saw then as he watched the two genin use a mixture of hand-to-hand combat and weapon skills to take down and kill their opponents could only make him wonder what sort of killing machines they would make when they were older. Hiram Kyoko had been having a rather dull time until the Kaneka rebels had attacked. She had been hired by the Suzaku to deliver the caravan safely to the Iwa border where they would negotiate a treaty and also her acceptance into Iwa. Kyoko had never been one to be allied to a certain village. To be bound by rules and regulations was simply not a thing. It had been the major reason she had left her home village of the grass and become an inn for hire. However, a battle was not something she would miss, and the Suzaku had promised that she would get a large number of Kaneka rebels to kill at her leisure. Best of all, they had also agreed to pay her for each of the rebels she killed. However, they had failed to mention the presence of Konoha amongst the Kaneka. It complicated things. If she managed to kill even one of them, she decided that she would need to get paid for the extra effort. Kyoko had been keeping an eye on the three nin from Konoha the moment she had realized what they were. The two genin, she knew she could take easily, yet the jounin, she wasn't able to identify. Mainly due to the fact that he kept disappearing each time he made a kill. It was not until he appeared next to her, a kunai rushing towards her face, that she realized who he was. Kyoko barely managed to duck the kunai stab, swiping at his stomach with her own, causing him to flip back and land in front of her. Hada Kakashi, son of the White Fang. She breathed as she got a proper look at her opponent's face. Fighting a jounin would be something she could do any day. After all, she had been only ranked Takubetsu jounin before she had left her village, and that had been at least 2 to 3 years ago. And she considered herself to have improved in the time she spent as a freelance ninja. However, Hada Kakashi had been a name she had heard and feared even in her days as a grass nin, and she had not had a year pass where that name had not been feared anywhere. If she had improved, why wouldn't he? "I'm surprised you know me," stated the man as he scratched his head. "I didn't think the stories about me would reach your village." Kyoko didn't wait for the man to finish, instead rushing at him with a kunai in mid-sentence. She vanished, reappearing behind Kakashi, a slash aimed at his back. Her slash struck empty air as the jounin vanished himself. A slight gust of wind alerted her to his presence to her left, but she was too slow to avoid the blow that came. "Past," she thought as she rolled with the blow, immediately putting some distance between her and the Konoha nin. This was one fight she had not bargained for. "You're good," he said as he put his left hand in his pocket, putting himself in a ready stance. "But you're not good enough." The Konoha jounin wasted no further time, launching a couple of shuriken at her. The shuriken in itself were no problem, yet Kyoko was indecisive. Any move she made could go according to his plan, and she could not let him control the whole battle. "Page shuriken no jutsu," came his voice, and what happened next almost caught out the Takubetsu jounin. The rather small amount of shuriken rapidly multiplied as they approached, forcing Kyoko to shunshin herself out of their way. Kyoko reappeared what she assumed to be a safe distance away from Kakashi, a distance from which she could start launching her own attacks, yet again, he was one step ahead of her. The heat of the smaller fireballs from Kakashi's Kaiten, Hausenkan no Jutsu, was the only thing that warned her of the impending danger, allowing her to Kawarimi out of harm's way. Kyoko performed the Kawarimi once again, hoping to buy herself some time to calm down and come up with a counter plan. If only she could recall everything the bingo book had said on Kakashi. She knew he had an ace up his sleeve, something that made him very powerful, yet she somehow could not put her finger on it. She knew that it had something to do with a Dojutsu, yet the silver-haired man simply did not give her enough time to think. Kyoko heard the whistling of kunai slicing through the air and was barely able to perform her own hand seals in time. the earth wall suddenly popping up to block the wave of projectiles coming her way. Kyoko didn't stop there, immediately forming more hand seals for the door Yuden, the dragon head forming from the wall she had flipped up and spitting the mud balls at the onrushing Jounin. Kyoko watched as the balls hit the Jounin with a satisfying thud, yet she knew it would not be that easy to take him down. However, she never expected him to vanish in a puff of smoke. Bunshin? She realized. Yet what kind of Bunshin would be solid enough to take a blow and then disappear in a puff of smoke? Surely not Tsuchibunshin or Mizubunshin. Kyoko felt something grab her leg and looked downwards. A hand had just broken out of the ground and grabbed her. The realization that Kakashi had a hold on her drove her into a panic state and she replaced herself with a log in a hurry. It wasn't until she met Kakashi's Sharingan the moment she replaced the log that it finally came to her what she had forgotten. His hypnotic ability due to the Sharingan. But it was already too late. The blackness of Kakashi's Tomo engulfed her, knocking her unconscious. The battle had gone well. As well as Tomoshiro could have hoped for, something he had doubted the moment the second caravan had shown up. Yet the genin had made up for the slight falter he and his army had made. They had been the ones to really turn around that battle, and it would never leave the rebel army's memories how two kids had done it. Tomoshiro could not help but reflect on yesterday's battle as he watched the two genin have their breakfast together while chatting peacefully. They seemed as if nothing had happened not 24 hours ago. As if they had not killed a lot of people and had remained as innocent as they had been born. The rebel movement had taken casualties. Many had died in the fighting. But Tomoshiro could only feel happy and grateful towards the three Konohinin without whom they would not have won this particular battle and what seems like the entire war. They would always owe Team 7 a huge debt, and though Tomoshiro had wished the Konoha had sent him a Jounin team in the beginning, he knew he would be sad to see them go. Tomoshiro had watched a battle between the two Jounin. At least as much of it as he could follow with his untrained eyes, and it would be safe to say he had never seen anything like it. However, it was the fact that a team of full Jounin from Konoha had arrived that bothered him. Kakashi had said that it would be at least a week before the team arrived, yet here they were, 3 days since Team 7 had arrived themselves. Tomoshiro was happy in one sense. It would mean he would have a much formidable team to rely on, a team whose talents and abilities had been tested to their fullest. Yet somehow, he could not shake the feeling that it meant more for the young genin. Something he couldn't quite get a hold of. Not to mention that Kakashi had disappeared with the Jounin seemingly in charge of the mission. Tomoshiro glanced up as he heard footsteps approaching him. "Omen, Kaneka-sama," came Kakashi's voice. "Omen for both disturbing you during your meal time and for asking you of this. But the Hokage wishes a duty for me and my team, and it is imperative that we leave as soon as we can. The Jounin team that arrived today shall take over our duties." Tomoshiro looked at Kakashi hoping the Jounin would let something slip about their mission, yet he could not read any emotion in the Jounin's face. The mask that the man wore didn't help either. It made him completely impossible to read, but then again, it would be what Kakashi wanted himself. Tomoshiro had no choice but to nod. Kakashi wasn't asking permission to leave. He was merely notifying their employer of their change in plans. They would leave, no matter what he said and by any means necessary, and Tomoshiro wasn't so keen on losing more men over a couple of shinobi. The rebel leader watched the Jounin as he approached his team. Tomoshiro could not hear the exact words that were said. Yet he knew that they were few and direct as the genin stood up and left, leaving their plates unfinished. It had to be urgent for them to skip breakfast. Tomoshiro could only hope that it wasn't something bad. Done. What if Naruto gives up on Sasuke Sasuke bashing? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.